My battleship can be upgraded. Chapter 61. The caravan, directly ahead in its route, encountered a small fleet consisting of 2 Fire Seed warships and 1 assault ship. Without any prior communication or negotiation, they brazenly launched a sneak attack. Caught off guard, without even enough time to raise their energy shields, one of Wuhaozi's Fire Seed warships was targeted by concentrated fire, and its hull was damaged. Fortunately, the caravan's formation remained intact, and a scout ship on the periphery blocked one of the fatal cannon shots. Although the scout ship was heavily damaged, the Fire Seed warship behind it did not sustain critical damage, only armor damage to its bow section. Enemy attack. Enemy attack. Raise energy shields quickly. Quickly deploy MI particles. Don't give the enemy another chance to launch long-range attacks. Fire Seed warships advance to meet the enemy, assault ships cover the retreat of the transport ships. Scout ships expand the reconnaissance range to confirm the surrounding situation. Send a message to the mining area Starfield fleet behind us, demanding they confirm their stance. Wuhaozi's caravan was undoubtedly an experienced fleet. Although they hadn't expected to be suddenly attacked in this previously safe airspace, from Wuhao's down to the commanders of each warship in the fleet, and even the crew members, there was no excessive panic. Instead, they quickly adopted a series of accurate and effective countermeasures. The deployment of MI particles would greatly affect sky patrol radars within the effective range, causing the hit rate of long-range artillery to drop to a quite moving level. Fire Seed warships, with their energy shields raised, possessed anti-strike capabilities far superior to assault ships. Having 2 Fire Seed warships advance to engage the enemy first was clearly the most prudent approach. Subsequently, the 6 assault ships in the escort fleet, with the battle situation unclear, first covered the retreat of the transport ships to avoid being caught in the fighting, while also waiting for an opportunity to join the battle, which was also a very reasonable response. The remaining 3 scout ships were tasked with the important responsibility of clarifying the battlefield situation. Whether the enemy had other forces lurking, whether there were special airspaces nearby, and whether a third party might join the battle, all required the scout ships to detect and provide early warning. The fleet under Wuhaozi's command responded appropriately. The Jin family fleet, as the attackers, also moved decisively and cleanly. With Sima Disao's LV.11 flagship leading the way, Sima Delang's LV.12 flagship followed closely behind, and Sima Zongda's assault ship provided rear cover. The Jin family's 2 Fire Seed warships raised their energy shields first, then unhesitatingly plunged into the MI particle deployment range, rapidly approaching the 2 oncoming Fire Seed warships. Meanwhile, the assault ship commanded by Sima Zongda carved an arc, attempting to flank the caravan's 2 Fire Seed warships, seemingly intending to tie down the caravan's transport fleet and those assault ships located at the rear. Operating in a foreign land, and moreover, stirring up trouble with the local powers, naturally required strict adherence to the principles of quick, accurate, and ruthless. The distance between the 2 sides rapidly decreased, and after just over 10 minutes, they entered the close quarters combat phase. 0.1 light minutes. The caravan's 2 Fire Seed warships were the first to fire their standard main cannons, high-velocity kinetic projectiles streaking through the void of space, passing just to either side of Sima Disao's flagship at close range. Near miss. Haha, a watchdog is just a watchdog, they can't even hit that, useless. Inside the command bridge, Sima Disao, eyes bloodshot, roared loudly. Steady, continue to close the distance, begin standard main cannon charging in 30 seconds. Understood, Captain. His gunners on board also responded with high spirits. This was Sima Disao's style, he would rather endure the enemy's firepower first, but close the distance as much as possible in one go, to maximize the hit rate of his own firepower. Sima Disao truly lives up to his nickname, Mad Dog, having him spearhead the attack is indeed the best choice. Sima Delang chuckled grimly. Captain, Sima Disao's combat style mainly stems from the blue quality additional module installed on his flagship, which can temporarily enhance the standard main cannon's power, thus he has no choice but to close the distance to ensure accuracy. Our ship is different. Compared to explosive firepower that can only last for a short duration, we possess stable, continuous damage, which is more suitable for facing opponents with energy shields. If our ship were to go against Sima Disau's flagship, I dare guarantee that our ship would ultimately emerge victorious. The adjutant beside him answered respectfully. Sima Delang snorted coldly and said, "Nonsense, do you think I wouldn't know that? Even that brute Sima Disau is well aware of it, otherwise, would he have agreed so readily to undertake the Vanguard assault mission?" The adjutant, over 40 years old, bowed his head and assented, showing no resentment at being reprimanded by a junior half his age. The disparity in social standing was like heaven and earth, not to mention the difference in status between a captain and an adjutant. No matter how great the humiliation, he could only swallow it. On the assault ship, Sima Zongda silently watched the combat command screen. With Sima Disau's assault, coupled with Sima Delang's sustained damage output, even if everything went smoothly, it would be impossible to cripple one of the Fire Seed warships of the convoy in a single round of shelling. After all, Fire Seed warships specifically tasked with escorting transport ships prioritize defensive capabilities above all else. Therefore, before Sima Disau's assault, the energy shield of one of the convoy's Fire Seed warships must be maximally depleted. While the two Fire Seed warships of the convoy focused their attention on the two rapidly advancing Fire Seed warships of the Jin family. A high-speed missile was suddenly launched from Sima Zongda's assault ship, which was already nearing the edge of the main battlefield, targeting the convoy's Fire Seed warship that had been damaged in the previous sneak attack. Close-range missile launch. Missile type identification, it's a Sidewinder. An energy field neutralization missile. Oh no, quickly shut down the energy shield. Attempt evasive maneuvers. Too late, at such close range, evasion is impossible. Secondary standard main cannon anti-air barrage. Within the MI particle dispersion range, the automatic fire control system cannot function normally, relying solely on manual control by gunners is pure luck. The price of one Sidewinder plus its launcher is enough to buy half an assault ship. I can't believe some rich idiot would actually mount a Sidewinder on an assault ship. A dazzling blue light flashed. The Sidewinder energy field neutralization missile, also known as a shield killer, launched from Sima Zongda's flagship, accurately hit its target. After the flash of light, the energy shield enveloping the hull of that Fire Seed warship visibly began to flicker erratically. Warning. Energy shield down to 12%. It held on. As expected of a green-grade energy shield, it even withstood a Sidewinder, a major weapon specifically designed against energy shields, wahaha. Cheers erupted on the convoy's warship. On his flagship, Sima Zongda's lips curled into a cold sneer. Once the Sidewinder energy field neutralization missile hit, the fate of this Fire Seed warship was already sealed. While they were busy dealing with the missile, Sima Disau's flagship had already approached to a sufficiently close range. 30 seconds had long passed, and after a mere 10 seconds of charging, Sima Disau's flagship's standard main cannon spewed a furious flame. Compared to the shells from the earlier sneak attack, the high-speed kinetic energy shell fired from Sima Disau's flagship now had a noticeably higher velocity. This was the effect of Sima Disau activating an additional ship-borne module on his flagship. Thunder Pressure Device Blue Energy Consumption 80 use. Upon activation, increases the speed of the next 3 kinetic standard main cannon shells by 30%. Cooldown 30 minutes. For kinetic shells, a 30% increase in shell velocity is equivalent to a direct 30% increase in destructive power. The reason Sima Disau had to approach for the shot was to ensure the standard main cannon wouldn't miss after activating this module. If accuracy could be guaranteed, 3 consecutive enhanced standard main cannon bombardments would be enough to break the energy shields of most enemies of similar combat power levels, securing a combat advantage. Conversely, if accuracy could not be guaranteed, failing to unleash the effect of the thunder pressure device, then it would be up to the opponent's performance. As Sima Disau approached for firing, the 2 Fire Seed warships of the convoy, due to their standard main cannons having fired prematurely and still being in cooldown, could only watch helplessly as the Jin family's 2 warships advanced. With the distance further closing, Sima Disau's efforts received positive feedback. The first kinetic shell from his flagship's standard main cannon, enhanced by the thunder pressure device, forcefully struck the midsection of the convoy's Fire Seed warship, whose energy shield was heavily damaged. First, it collided with the already weakened energy shield, After an extremely brief stagnation, the energy shield suddenly dissipated. The kinetic shell, with slightly reduced momentum, still maintained considerable speed after overcoming the energy shield's obstruction, slamming hard into the midsection of the warship's hull. The armor plate centered at the point of impact instantly caved in, deformed, and finally ruptured. This also caused cracks in the surrounding adjacent armor plates. Fortunately, after the double buffering of the energy shield and armor, the shell's kinetic energy was exhausted, ultimately preventing further damage to the hull. Before the crew members on this warship could even breathe a sigh of relief, the flagship of Sima Dalang, arriving immediately after, sprayed a cluster of bluish-green plasma, hitting the ill-fated warship once again. This cluster of bluish-green plasma, after hitting the hull of this convoy fire seed warship, rapidly spread outwards and began to react with the armor plating on the outside of the hull. Half the hull of the entire warship was covered in this bluish-green plasma, and the armor beneath it was slowly corroded and decomposed. Although slow, it was continuous and showed no signs of stopping in the short term. Especially at the original location of the armor damage, the bluish-green plasma seeped into the hull protected by the armor, and the speed of this corrosion and decomposition was much faster compared to the armored parts. It's a continuous damage type of abnormal attack. Quickly activate the isolation layer. Requesting aid from the rear, our ship needs to temporarily withdraw from combat to clear the abnormal attack effects and await energy shield restart. Compared to the caravan's panic, Sima Zongda, on the other hand, let out a sigh of relief. Whether it was Sima Disao or Sima Dalang, their first round of attacks successfully hit their targets. The beginning of the battle was quite perfect. The emerald green plasma came from the standard main cannon on Sima Dalang's warship. Sidewinder plasma cannon, green, attack strength. 3. Attack attribute. Plasma, continuous damage strength. 3. Duration, 60 seconds. Although it was only green quality, this special attack type standard main cannon, which came with abnormal attack effects, was incomparably more valuable than ordinary kinetic cannons. Even compared to the blue quality add-on module on Sima Disao's ship, it was not much inferior. Even though blue quality was one grade higher than green quality, and an add-on module was one grade higher than a standard module. But the effect of this standard main cannon was good and rare. Although its burst power was a bit lacking, its duration was long enough, effective against both energy shield and armor, and its damage output was stable. Commander's assault tactics indeed worked in one fell swoop, truly worthy of being the person Sima Disao appreciates. The adjutant beside him turned and complimented Sima Zongda. Sima Zongda replied with a few insincere words of modesty. Being forced to serve under Sima Disao was Sima Zongda's a helpless move. Compared to other direct descendants, Sima Disao's own foundation was insufficient, so he showed considerably more respect for talented individuals like Sima Zongda who pledged allegiance to him. However, for the same reason, Sima Disao was not entirely at ease with him. Most of the middle management on the entire warship were veterans who had followed Sima Disao. Especially the adjutant assigned to him, whose purpose of surveillance outweighed assistance. This was evident just from the title. Commander, not Captain. This precisely indicated that Sima Zongda only had command authority on this warship. In fact, Sima Disao's warship, with its high burst power, was suitable for this kind of assault tactic, but Sima Dalang's warship was not. If Sima Zongda had not personally risked it, taking on the task of supplementing damage and critically damaging the energy shield of a fire seed warship with a Sidewinder energy field neutralization bomb, it would have been impossible to achieve such a battle outcome in a single concentrated fire. Sima Zongda always held reservations about Sima Disao agreeing to join forces with Sima Dalang. Although after Yuan Shu's lucky escape, the battle axe had disappeared. Even after Sima Zongda arrived, he couldn't find any clues. But the worst outcome would only be a failed mission evaluation. On the contrary, choosing to join forces with Sima Dalang to attack the caravan in front of them meant escalating the situation. The simple conflict of originally pursuing Yuan Shu and the battle axe, a single warship, instantly expanded to provoking a major noble family within the Zijing kingdom. The most crucial point was that taking such a great risk offered little guarantee of reward. He understood Sima Disao's apprehension towards Sima Dalang. But the more apprehensive one was, the more one should keep a respectful distance, rather than trying to make a deal with a tiger, knowing one was in a weaker position. However, Sima Disao was determined, and he was helpless. He could only try his best to formulate feasible tactical plans, so that when facing a caravan of similar overall strength, they could achieve victory in battle with the smallest possible cost. Compared to the Jin family's 2 warships, each with its own unique tactics, the 2 Fire Seed warships on the caravan's side seemed much more ordinary. Although a series of strikes, sufficient to heavily damage an ordinary LV.10 Fire Seed warship, only caused their energy shield to overload and their hull armor to suffer moderate damage. And this level of damage, as long as they temporarily withdrew from the battlefield, spent a little time on self-repair and energy shield restart, they could recover most of their combat effectiveness. They were indeed durable. However, under the relentless attacks of the Jin family's 2 Fire Seed warships, withdrawing from combat was not easy. Despite Wu Hao's immediately issuing an order to the 6 assault ships escorting the transport fleet in the rear to immediately join the battlefield, to tie down the Jin family's 2 Fire Seed warships and create an opportunity for the damaged warships to withdraw for repairs, as soon as he witnessed the battle. Unfortunately, Sima Zongda's Sidewinder energy field neutralization bomb, Sima Disao's thunder pressure device, and Sima Delang's Sidewinder plasma cannon, the 3 of them coordinated perfectly. In just a short round of attacks, within less than a minute, they successfully broke through the energy shield of one of the caravan's Fire Seed warships and caused moderate damage to its armor. The speed was too fast, catching them off guard. Under normal circumstances, Wu Hao's had considerable confidence in the anti-strike capability of the caravan's 2 Fire Seed warships, which is why he adopted the tactic of first observing the battlefield and letting the assault fleet wait for an opportunity. This was understandable. Regrettably, under the combined efforts of the Jin family's 3 warships, this waiting for an opportunity instead became an obstacle. When the caravan's Fire Seed warship most needed assistance, the assault fleet was still in the process of covering the retreat of the transport fleet. They were unable to provide assistance in a short time. A cannon shot from Sima Disao's flagship penetrated the already shattered armor and hit the engine room located at the stern of the ship. The damage to the critical area caused the entire warship to lose power, and under the continuous damage from Sima Delang's plasma cannons, this Fire Seed warship failed to hold on. The warship sank. The shipboard Fire Seed extinguished. 6:27. 15 minutes after the battle began, the merchant fleet lost 1 scout ship and 1 Fire Seed warship. The remaining fleet consisted of 1 Level 10 Fire Seed warship, 3 scout ships, 6 assault ships, and 8 large transport spacecraft. The Jin family fleet suffered no losses, with 1 Level 11 Fire Seed warship, 1 Level 12 Fire Seed warship, and 1 assault ship remaining. This turtle shell is really tough. Even without shields, it can take such a beating. It's not completely useless after all. Sima Disao sighed with emotion. It's mainly because Lord Sima Delang's burst firepower was somewhat insufficient, otherwise the opponent wouldn't have lasted this long. The adjutant said with a smile. Silver-plated pewter spearhead, that's what these young masters are. When it comes to real combat, without us at the front, they're nothing. Sima Disao sneered. Although his flagship's overall combat rating was 1 level lower than Sima Delang's, combat wasn't just a simple game of comparing numbers. Even without considering the skill level of the crew members and the soft factors like the commander's tactical acumen. Just the additional modules equipped on the warship, any one of them could change the tide of battle. The overall combat rating was merely a reference. Otherwise, the 2 Fire Seed warships of the merchant fleet, whose overall combat ratings were comparable to the Jin family's 2 Fire Seed warships, would not have been sunk in such a short time. If Wang Dong had been present, he would have inevitably sighed, noting that while the Jin family scions were indeed scoundrels, their capabilities were truly formidable. Wu Hao's merchant fleet had been trading for many years. Even backed by the Tianfang Earl territory, he was considered an old hand, having clashed with star pirates more than once or twice. Yet, in actual combat, he was outmatched by the Jin family fleet. While Sima Zongda's pre-planned tactics were brilliant, it was primarily the quality of the shipboard modules on the Jin family's Fire Seed warships that significantly surpassed those on the 2 mediocre Fire Seed warships of the merchant fleet. Seeing the unidentified fleet, aggressive and immediately focusing fire to sink one of the merchant fleet's main escorts. Wu Hao's immediately realized that his response was wrong. The attackers were not a disorganized rabble like the Star Pirates, mostly composed of ordinary warships. This time, the opponents were the real deal, those Fire Seed warships with extraordinary potential, controlled by the privileged class. Unlike the two escort ships in the merchant fleet, which were merely mass-produced, equipped with mostly inferior quality shipboard modules, and nearly 300 years old, on the verge of being phased out. Facing such opponents, the merchant fleet's escort force actually held no advantage in terms of hard power. He should have deployed all his forces immediately. Assault ship fleet, advance immediately. The enemy was lucky to ambush and sink one of our warships, but they are not unscathed. Focus fire on that high-burst warship first, its energy shield is already below 50%. Scout Ship 01, leave the MI particle dispersion area and request assistance from the Mining District Planet's security forces, in the name of the Tianfang Earl territory. Scout Ship 02, disengage from the battlefield and negotiate with the Kongsha Merchant Guild and other forces following behind, demanding their assistance in defending the merchant fleet. Scout Ship 03, continue to maintain alert status. Wu Hao's decided to have the transport fleet temporarily form up for self-preservation. Because it could basically be concluded that the attackers only had these three warships in front of them, and there was no risk to the transport fleet until the escort fleet was defeated. He himself was on another Fire Seed warship of the merchant fleet. Luckily, he wasn't on the sunken warship. The dispersion of MI particles would hinder the function of detection equipment and severely interfere with communication signals. Close-range battlefield communication was barely usable, but long-range communication was problematic. Wu Hao's had no choice but to send the scout ships to carry out the corresponding communication tasks. On the Jin family fleet's side, after successfully focusing fire and sinking one of the merchant fleet's Fire Seed warships, they were not entirely unscathed either. The intense, close-range engagement led to increased hit rates for both sides. While clinging tightly to their opponents, they also endured the opponents' resistance. The opponent's desperate counterattack caused Sima Disao's flagship's energy shield to drop to 43. At the same time, Sima Zongda's assault ship was also repeatedly strafed by the enemy warship's secondary cannons, sustaining moderate damage to its hull armor and the destruction of two functional compartments. Small warships like assault ships cannot carry energy shields, and their resistance to strikes is significantly inferior to Fire Seed warships. Only Sima Delang's flagship remained in good condition. The enemy's assault ship fleet is coming up. 3 against 7, the pressure won't be small. 13th brother, can you handle it? If not, let's retreat. Sima Delang said with a sarcastic smile. 16th brother, it's just a few assault ships, and you're already scared. If you're such a coward, you should be nestled in a woman's arms, suckling, what are you doing out here? They're nothing but a bunch of chickens and dogs, keep going. Sima Disao's expression was grim. He was the one who took the mission, and he would be the one to suffer if it failed. Sima Delang could just walk away, but he couldn't. He knew that Sima Delang wasn't really trying to retreat, but rather to keep him at the forefront. Normally, a warship with a damaged energy shield could appropriately retreat to adjust and wait for the energy shield to recover. However, Sima Delang clearly had no intention of covering his retreat. Looking at Sima Zongda's assault ship, it was already damaged, making it even less likely to serve as a meat shield for cover. Looking at the yellow reading of 43 on the virtual screen in front of him, Sima Disao steeled his heart and issued several commands in quick succession. The next moment, Sima Disao's flagship suddenly accelerated, abandoning the merchant fleet's Fire Seed warship that was under siege by the Jin family's 3 warships, and boldly charged towards the 6 assault ships approaching in formation. Rather than waiting for the opponent's 6 assault ships to join the battle and focus fire on me along with their Fire Seed warship, it's better to actively engage the assault ship fleet and leave the remaining Fire Seed warship to Sima Delang. Sima Disao's actions surprised all parties. Sima Delang's expression darkened. This mad dog reacted quite quickly, turning passive into active. His adjutant, however, smiled and said, while it's not the optimal outcome for us, Sima Disao isn't a fool either. Without the pressure exerted on him by the commander through various means, Sima Disao wouldn't have taken this path. The adjutant's comfort slightly eased Sima Delang's expression. Sima Disao's proactive charge, despite being outnumbered, was met with approval from the merchant fleet, who praised his bravery. The remaining Fire Seed warship, in turn, entangled Sima Delang's flagship and Sima Zongda's assault ship, hoping that the merchant fleet's assault ship squadron could overwhelm the lone Fire Seed warship that had broken off to intercept them. Sima Zongda had a bad feeling. Sima Delang's almost overtly displayed malice made him lose all hope for the prospects of this attack. Sima Zongda understood that Sima Disao wasn't foolish. However, under Sima Delang's aggressive pressure, Sima Disao still stubbornly insisted on continuing this attack. This could only mean that the importance of this mission to Sima Disao exceeded a certain threshold. Sima Delang also saw this point, which is why he manipulated him so brazenly. Sima Zongda let out a faint sigh. Sima Disao had never truly considered him a confidant, leading to many gaps in intelligence. Beside him, an adjutant arranged by Sima Disao stepped forward and indignantly declared, "Commander, Sima Delang's retreat in the face of battle is despicable. Commander Sima Disao is fighting alone to buy us time. I suggest this ship, with an indomitable spirit, engage in a boarding action to utterly annihilate the enemy. Calm down. Until Commander Sima Disao gives us new orders, we must not make rash decisions. We must trust his tactical command." Sima Zongda was almost amused by the adjutant's foolishness. Boarding actions aren't that easy. At the very least, you need to break the enemy warship's energy shield before even considering such a tactic. Currently, the opponent's energy shield is still almost intact. How could you board him? Moreover, throwing your life away now would only make Sima Delang laugh and be a foolish choice that would cost Sima Disao his last chance of survival. What good is loyalty without a brain? Sima Zongda secretly resolved that after this incident, no matter what, he would find a way to leave Sima Disao's command. Having a useless teammate like that is truly unbearable. Wu Hao's was naturally unaware of the internal squabbles within the Jin family's warships. However, Sima Disao's flagship, forced to engage the enemy alone, filled Wu Hao's with delight. Whether it was due to the opponent's tactical error or a lack of experience leading to a display of reckless bravery, for the merchant fleet, it was good news either way. Originally, if Sima Delang's warship had pushed forward to cover Sima Disao's flagship for a temporary retreat, he would have been a formidable opponent once his energy shield recovered. But the merchant fleet's assault ships had no energy shield protection. Every shot they took was a direct hit. A Fire Seed warship against an assault ship was like a father fighting his son. The advantage was too obvious. Yet, the Jin family fleet's bizarre maneuver was to send a Fire Seed warship with an energy shield already more than half depleted, to single-handedly engage 6 fully intact assault ships advancing in formation. One could only say his courage was commendable. Courage commendable, here was not a compliment. It meant that, apart from courage, there was nothing else worth praising. The 6 assault ships of the merchant fleet formed a standard wedge formation. As Sima Disao's flagship accelerated forward, this wedge formation also slightly adjusted its course, rushing towards him head-on. What is an assault ship? On the battlefield, it strikes suddenly. If Sima Disao was valorous, then what the merchant fleet's assault fleet displayed at this moment was ferocity. 6 against 1, and the one was already half crippled, yet it carried the hope of changing the battle's outcome. Wu Hao's had already promised substantial rewards in the communication channel. Then there was the thought of what would happen to their families in the Count's territory if the escort mission failed. Without exception, all the assault ship captains went all out. 15 minutes later, a Fire Seed warship and the wedge formation of 6 assault ships violently collided. Both sides only opened fire when they were close enough to guarantee a 100% hit rate. They almost brushed past each other. Sima Disao's flagship once again activated its blue-quality thunder pressure device. Just one standard main cannon shot completely shattered the bow of an oncoming assault ship, instantly crippling it and leaving it on the verge of sinking. On the other side, the 6 assault ships' bombardments also landed squarely on Sima Disao's flagship. The half-depleted energy shield vibrated violently again, and its durability plummeted. 21. Sima Disao cursed. He hadn't expected that mere escort warships of a merchant fleet could possess such tenacious fighting will, holding out until the last moment to fire in such a death-defying charge. It wasn't like he had hoped before, where they would hastily fire from a distance and then scatter to avoid his attacks. After all, the explosive firepower of Sima Disau's flagship had been fully demonstrated in the previous battle. Although his standard main cannon directly sank one assault ship with a single shot, and his secondary cannons simultaneously caused minor damage to two other assault ships, losing over 20% of his energy shield's durability was completely unexpected. But the arrow was on the string, and he had to let it fly. Sima Disau had recently encountered an accident and offended a high-ranking member of his family. He had finally found a way to resolve it and urgently needed to acquire high-quality ship modules to gain the other party's forgiveness. Accepting the mission to pursue Yuan Shu and the battle axe also stemmed from this. Otherwise, who would bother to travel far to a foreign land? Wouldn't staying in the Goldfinch Federation be more pleasant? If this mission failed and he couldn't obtain high-quality ship modules, the consequences would be unimaginable. Wu Haozi's merchant fleet, for Sima Disau, was his last straw. He would absolutely not give up. Even though Sima Dalang had already shown his vicious fangs, Sima Disau could not retreat a single step. No matter what, Sima Dalang could not directly attack him. At most, he could only hinder him. This meant that as long as he was strong enough to defeat the merchant fleet's escort fleet, he could still successfully turn the tide. Gritting his teeth, Sima Disau did not retreat in the slightest. After the head-on collision, he immediately maneuvered his flagship again, charging fiercely towards the remaining 5 assault ships. He wanted to utterly crush the merchant fleet's assault fleet's will to fight with an unstoppable, make-or-break momentum. On the merchant fleet's side, the remaining 5 assault ships, under Wu Haozi's series of encouragements and their respective captains' commands, charged forward just as defiantly. 6:44 a.m. The second round of head-on ramming. The merchant fleet's second assault ship was sunk by Sima Disau's cannon, and 2 assault ships suffered moderate damage from secondary cannon fire. Sima Disau's flagship's energy shield remaining, 6%. The red warning flashing continuously on the virtual screen indicated that the energy shield was about to overload. Sima Disau, however, was overjoyed. During the recent collision, the merchant fleet's assault fleet's formation was not as neat as the first time, and the firing distance was not as close. As a result, one of the rear assault ships did not hit Sima Disau's flagship. Otherwise, his energy shield loss would have been more than 29%. Sima Disau didn't care about a few percentage points of shield durability. What delighted him was that, compared to the first collision, the merchant fleet's assault ships' morale had clearly been hit and had dropped significantly. Indeed, 1 cannon shot, 1 assault ship sunk. As long as it hit, it was a kill. Yet, their own attacks could only deplete the energy shield's durability. A drop in morale was inevitable. Sima Disau's morale soared, and he commanded his flagship to turn again, preparing for a third head-on collision. Wu Haozi was drenched in sweat, using reason, emotion, and threats in the communication channel. 7:05 a.m. The third collision. The merchant fleet's third assault ship sank. 1 assault ship was heavily damaged and lost combat capability. 2 assault ships remained. Sima Disau's flagship's energy shield overloaded, and its bow armor suffered minor damage. Haha, a mere merchant group. The Fire Seed warship is tough enough, but the assault ship is useless, like a target. Sima Disau laughed loudly, his face flushed. Facts proved he had won his gamble. Even if the energy shield was overloaded and needed 12 hours to complete the overload buffering process before it could be reactivated, his flagship still had a layer of sturdy armor protection. The opponent's only remaining 2 assault ships, one of which was moderately damaged, could not possibly be his match. The merchant group's last remaining Fire Seed warship, though still entangled with Sima Dalang's flagship, was no longer a threat. In this round, Sima Disau had indeed won his gamble. 7:12 a.m. 1 hour after the start of the battle, the merchant group had lost 1 reconnaissance ship, 1 Fire Seed warship, and 4 assault ships. Their remaining fleet consisted of 1 Level 10 Fire Seed warship, 3 reconnaissance ships, 2 assault ships, and 8 large transport ships. The Jin family fleet suffered no losses, with 1 Level 11 Fire Seed warship, one level 12 Fire Seed warship, and one assault ship remaining. The Jin family fleet held the upper hand. Sima Disau's combat achievements made everyone on the battlefield look his way. Captain, you are mighty. On Sima Disau's flagship, cheers erupted, and the crew members rejoiced. This mad dog. Sima Delang was greatly surprised and murmured, somewhat flustered. This kind of battle result, it seems to be a mix of bravery and luck. Sima Zongda ignored the cheers of his adjutant beside him and pondered in his heart. It seems that after activating the thunder pressure device, the standard main cannon's firepower was just enough to achieve armor-piercing suppression against the merchant group's assault ships, leading to a one-shot kill effect. This crushing blow was the biggest factor in the sharp decline of the assault ship fleet's morale. Otherwise, if he couldn't sink them with one shot, Sima Disau would have been in a tough fight. He quickly analyzed the reason for Sima Disau's advantage. The three critical hit effects brought by the thunder pressure device made Sima Disau's momentum unstoppable. Even after 3 clashes, the amplification effect had disappeared, but the merchant group's morale was already broken, and their only 2 remaining assault ships were powerless to turn the tide. This is impossible. Wu Hao's was distraught. The assault ship fleet being crushed by the opponent made his heart sink, as if falling into an abyss. Wu Hao's was an ambitious and capable middle-aged man. Relying on the 2 Fire Seed warships' strong anti-strike capabilities, he deliberately reduced the armor of the assault ship fleet to enhance their speed. This adjustment allowed his merchant group, when encountering star pirates, to easily defend effectively with the 2 Fire Seed warships as pillars. And when the star pirates retreated, they often used the assault ships' speed advantage to pursue appropriately and gain additional battle results. After several times, the harvest was quite abundant. As the person in charge of the merchant group, Wu Hao's could take the lion's share of these spoils. Therefore, his merchant group's assault ship fleet had lower defensive capabilities than ordinary assault ships. This difference was not a problem when facing star pirates. But in front of the Jin family fleet, especially in front of Sima Disau's thunder pressure device, it was precisely countered. Tasting the bitter fruit of his own making, Wu Hao's mouth was full of bitterness. However, fate had not completely abandoned him. He had not lost yet. In the name of the Tianfang Earl Territory's 4th Merchant Group leader, I solemnly promise you all. As long as you can help the merchant group through this crisis, in the future, when the merchant group conducts transactions on the mining area planet, 1/10 of the net profit will be given to you for distribution. He successfully contacted the local forces fleet in the mining area Starfield, which was not far behind, through the reconnaissance ship he had sent out earlier. That was a considerable fighting force consisting of 6 assault ships and 2 reconnaissance ships. Especially those 6 assault ships were not the fragile kind found in Wu Hao's merchant group. Since there was still room for maneuver, for Wu Hao's, it was far from a desperate situation. Captain Wu, our Kongsha Merchant Guild needs to carry out an important mission this time and cannot participate in the battle at will. Please understand. Captain Wu, as long as you can promise us, the Tianyu Merchant Group, 1/10 of the profit, we will join the battle immediately. Our Quinao Guild Hall never actively intervenes in any disputes. We regret that we cannot provide assistance. Wu Hao's was not surprised by the 3 factions' evasions. It wasn't the first time they had dealt with each other. He knew what kind of people these local forces were. I have already dispatched a reconnaissance ship to leave the battlefield and report the situation to a third party. If the merchant group is defeated, then all of you who were present but stood by and watched will bear the same level of accountability from my Tianfang Earl territory. Conversely, if you can extend a helping hand in time, you will gain our friendship afterward. How to proceed? Please decide immediately. Wu Hao's threat carried considerable weight. For the entire Blackstone barony, the Tianfang Earl territory was a behemoth, let alone a few small planetary-level local forces. The local forces, who had been hoping to pick up some bargains, all cursed under their breath, wondering why Wu Hao's wasn't on that sunken Fire Seed warship. A few minutes later, another communication became an important factor in turning the situation in a different direction. After receiving the distress signal from the Tianfang Earl territory's merchant group, the mining district, adhering to the spirit of the limited mutual assistance principle among nobles, had dispatched a patrol fleet for reinforcement. At the same time, it also requested the three nearby local forces to rescue the merchant group. The Kongsha Merchant Guild and the other two local forces, all making a living in the mining district, had no choice but to obey the administrator's demands. Coupled with Wu Haoxi's decisive coercion and inducement, they had no choice but to grit their teeth and join the battle. At 7:35 a.m., the combined fleet of the Kongsha Merchant Guild and the other two local forces, totaling 6 assault ships and 2 reconnaissance ships, joined the battlefield. Wang Dong's pond followed closely, approaching the battlefield in stealth mode. At the same time, Sima Disao's flagship once again sank a heavily damaged assault ship from the merchant group. Although the protection of the energy shield was lost and the thunder pressure device had entered a buffering state, Sima Disao's momentum remained unstoppable. His flagship cleverly evaded the merchant group's assault ship's attempt to get close for a boarding battle and used a salvo from 4 secondary cannons to break through the opponent's already damaged armor, piercing it through. The last remaining assault ship no longer dared to engage head-on but switched to guerrilla tactics, only seeking to tie him down. Meanwhile, the Fire Seed warship where Wu Hao's was located and Sima Delang's warship were locked in a back-and-forth battle, evenly matched. The continuous damage caused by Sima Delang's flagship's standard main cannon was merely a minor irritation to Wu Hao's flagship. And Sima Delang himself had no intention of exerting himself, maintaining a safe distance while occasionally harassing with cannon fire. The merchant group's Fire Seed warship was already focused on anti-strike capability, so his bombardment did not have a high hit rate against Sima Delang's flagship, which had no desire to fight. Even if Wu Hao's could clearly see Sima Delang slacking off, he dared not give up on tying down Sima Delang. If he couldn't severely damage Sima Disao's flagship while its energy shield was overloaded, once its energy shield completed buffering and reactivated, the merchant group would truly have no chance of winning. Look, 6 more assault ships have joined the battle. Sima Disao completely ignored the 2 scout ships. It seems that some minor factions, who had been following the merchant group, bravely came to rescue it. Sima Disao showed no fear. Instead, he sneered, abandoned the last remaining, hiding assault ship of the merchant group, turned his direction, and charged straight ahead. Compared to the merchant group's assault ship fleet, these ships at least maintained a basic formation. The 6 assault ships that joined the battle later were clearly divided into 3 small groups, and the distance between them was not close. It was obvious at a glance that they were a disorganized mob. Sima Disao understood that as long as he could sink 2 or 3 of the warships with lightning speed, the rest would surely flee. At 7:47, both sides formed a head-on charge. The merchant group's last remaining assault ship, whose speed was slower than Sima Disao's flagship, could only desperately chase from behind. At first glance, it seemed to form a pincer attack with the 6 assault ships from Kongsha Merchant Guild and 2 other local factions. In reality, it was completely useless. On Sima Disao's flagship, the thunder pressure device finished buffering and unleashed its power once again. 3 minutes later, the head-on charge was completed. Sima Disao's standard main cannon heavily struck a Kongsha Merchant Guild assault ship, severely damaging its bow. But he failed to sink the opponent. Sima Zongda's judgment was not wrong. The burst firepower of Sima Disao's flagship was indeed just enough to suppress the fragile assault ships of Wu Hao's merchant group. However, when facing the ordinary assault ships of the Kongsha Merchant Guild, which were not modified and still had standard armor, he failed to achieve the crushing effect of a single-shot kill. This was very crucial. Although the bow was severely damaged, this assault ship of the Kongsha Merchant Guild did not lose its combat capability. During the passing head-on charge, Sima Disao's flagship was hit by 4 shells. The Kongsha Merchant Guild and the 2 other local factions were indeed a disorganized mob. They were divided into 3 distinct small groups, with no coordinated formation, and their will to fight was not high. But everything has 2 sides. The Kongsha Merchant Guild's direction, which Sima Disao targeted during the head-on charge, saw 2 assault ships unable to withstand the pressure, firing early and retreating. Not only did they fail to hit Sima Disao's flagship, but they were also directly hit by Sima Disao. However, the Tianyu Merchant Group and Quinao Guild Hall were unaffected. On the contrary, knowing that the opponent's target was not them, they appeared even more composed. All 4 assault ships fired at close range and successfully hit their targets. Bow armor moderately damaged, stern armor moderately damaged, midship armor lightly damaged. Armor module damage level, 44. Alarms from the damage control team were reported like snowflakes. Sima Disao was restlessly pacing around. Failing to achieve a crushing effect meant that the deterrent effect on the enemy would be significantly reduced. Captain, the newly arrived assault ships have considerable combat power. Our ship is in poor condition. What do you think? Should we first execute a strategic retreat and wait for the energy shield to reactivate? The adjutant advised in a solemn voice. Sima Disao understood the adjutant's meaning. He also knew that this was the most suitable choice at the moment. However, he also understood that Sima Dalang was clearly slacking off, and if he retreated, Sima Dalang would certainly retreat as well. Then this attack would be a failure. His last hope would also be shattered. To be honest, Wang Dong was somewhat surprised by the battle situation on the current battlefield. Sima Dalang and Wu Haozi's flagships were far apart, exchanging shots, seemingly slacking off. Sima Disao was on one side, facing 7 assault ships alone, his energy shield clearly overloaded, and his ship's armor damaged in multiple places. Sima Zongda's assault ship was also heavily damaged, yet he was still diligently outputting damage to Wu Haozi's flagship. If it weren't for the fact that others' attention wasn't on him, he would have been in constant peril long ago. Wang Dong had long anticipated the open and secret struggles between the two Jin family members. This was based on information he had gathered before his rebirth. Therefore, when he first released the news and dragged Wu Haozi's merchant group into the fray, his actual goal was merely to trigger an internal struggle between the two Jin family members and weaken them. As for Wu Haozi's merchant group, that was a secondary target, merely an external factor to induce internal strife. The two Sima brothers of the Jin family were Wang Dong's primary targets. After all, the effects of the Yuan family's secret medicine were still latent within him. Regardless of the outcome of the internal struggle between the two Sima brothers, one side would eventually overpower the other. Especially in an internal struggle on the battlefield, influenced by external factors, it was normal for it to escalate to a life or death situation. Wang Dong could profit from it. What he didn't expect, however, was that the disparity between the two was too obvious. Sima Disao fought valiantly, covered in scars, while Sima Dalang could leisurely slack off on the side, completely unharmed. This one-sided situation gave Wang Dong a strange sense of déjà vu, thinking, Sima Disao, your internal struggle skills are so poor, how did you even get by in the Jin family? Before his rebirth, Wang Dong had directly killed Sima Disao, so he wasn't particularly diligent in collecting information about him afterward. He naturally didn't know that Sima Disao's current situation was one of advance or die. This led to him being firmly controlled by Sima Dalang, forced to fight valiantly. Charge 2 more rounds. On his flagship, Sima Disao gritted his teeth, weighed his options repeatedly, and ultimately withstood the pressure, resolutely giving the order. Expend all source points for emergency repairs on the armor modules. The decisive resolution made the adjutant beside him swallow his opposing suggestion and instead carry out the command. Expend remaining source points. 103 units. Initiate emergency armor module repairs. Priority order. Stern, bow, midship. Watching the precious source points being consumed for such luxurious emergency repairs, not only Captain Sima Disao but also every crew member felt a deep pain. A little over 100 units of source points was the result of their arduous year of wandering in the cosmic void before. They had planned to accumulate more to upgrade the standard main cannon, but unexpectedly, it was wasted here. Sima Disao's decision, regardless of whether it was wasteful or not, was undoubtedly resolute. One man fighting desperately can hold off 10,000. This saying has an exaggerated component, but it was very fitting for the current battlefield. With the consumption of source points, the rapidly repaired armor brought heavy pressure to Sima Disao's opponents. After 2 more head-on charge rounds, 2 more assault ships, one from Kongsha Merchant Guild and one from Kui Nao Guild Hall, were heavily damaged and withdrew from the battle. Sima Disao's enemies were now reduced to 4 assault ships. And his flagship's armor damage level had only risen to 58. The effect of the source points was immediate. The resolve to fight to the death, coupled with armor that seemed to regenerate constantly, and the retreat of their comrades, completely shattered the morale of this mixed fleet, composed of 3 local forces. Wang Dong understood very clearly that certain ulterior motives were also at play. 2 assault ships from the Kongsha Merchant Guild were heavily damaged, and 1 assault ship from the Quinao Guild hull was heavily damaged, while the 2 assault ships of the Tianyu Merchant Group suffered only minor damage. The Tianyu Merchant Group would not fail to see that the main military strength of their 2 opposing factions had been severely damaged, and the ensuing vacuum period would be their best opportunity. Thus, the subsequent developments were quite normal. The Tianyu Merchant Group retreated first, with the Quinao Guild hull closely following, disengaging from the battlefield. Only the sole surviving, flimsy assault ship from the merchant fleet's escort remained, facing the formidable Sima Disao alone. There was no final charge, the remaining assault ship's fighting spirit collapsed, and it turned to flee, easily pursued by Sima Disao, who sank it directly after a few rounds of shelling. The situation was settled. At 8:21, the merchant fleet's escort consisted of only 1 Fire Seed warship and 3 reconnaissance ships. The remaining 3 assault ships and 2 reconnaissance ships from the Kongsha Merchant Guild and the other 2 local forces, after abandoning the 3 heavily damaged assault ships and urgently recovering escape pods, withdrew from the battlefield without looking back, fleeing in panic towards the mining area Starfield. Mad Dog truly lives up to his name. There are only wrong names, never wrong nicknames. Sima Delang's expression was no longer gloomy, but his tone became even colder. How can Sir Disao's reckless bravery compare to Captain's strategic brilliance? This ship achieved victory without expending a single resource, a true example of winning without bloodshed. His adjutant chuckled. HMPH, the Mad Dog has been cornered. A cornered dog will jump over the wall, but wanting to bite off the fattest piece of meat might not be so easy. Sima Delang sneered coldly. Order. Our ship will undertake the important task of pursuing the fleeing enemy. As for the easy job of clearing the battlefield, we'll leave that to our allied ships. To defeat a superior force and achieve a great victory is one thing, but now with a 2-to-1 numerical advantage, it should be even easier for 13th Brother. The adjutant smiled knowingly, issuing a series of commands. Sima Delang's flagship, which had already maintained a considerable distance from the enemy ships, suddenly increased thrust, rapidly pulling away along a curved trajectory, easily disengaging from the entanglement with Wu Haoxi's flagship. He left Sima Zongda's heavily damaged assault ship alone for Wu Haoxi's flagship. The assault ship, just over 100 meters long, looked particularly small and pathetic against the 300-meter-long Fire Seed warship. Its course clearly indicated it was heading at full throttle towards the transport fleet fleeing in the direction of the mining area Starfield. Despicable scoundrel. Sima Delang's blatant evasion of battle, grab the loot, and betrayal of allies infuriated Sima Disao. Even Wang Dong, who had been observing from the sidelines, sighed at this. To be so brazen, one can only express admiration. He's practically digging Sima Disao's grave. Sima Delang's actions filled Wu Hao's with unexpected joy. In this battle, his merchant group had indeed suffered a crushing defeat. Other cargo losses were acceptable, but the most important and valuable cargo, a purple-quality ship-borne module, was still on his flagship. If he could safely bring this ship-borne module back to the Tianfang Earl territory, even if he faced severe punishment, his life would not be in danger, and he would have a chance to make a comeback. Immediately, Wu Hao's changed course, intending to disengage from the battlefield. He even ignored the assault ship that had been constantly circling him, annoying like a fly. Sima Delang, I curse your ancestors. Sima Disao let out a heart-wrenching roar of anger. Yet, he had no choice but to drag his heavily damaged ship and forcibly catch up to Wu Haoxi's flagship. Intelligence obtained by Sima Zongda on the mining area planet indicated that the transport fleet's ships carried general cargo. The high-quality ship-borne module he was determined to acquire was carried by Wu Haoxi's flagship. If Wu Hao's escaped, all his efforts would be in vain. Next, Wang Dong witnessed the most brutal close-quarters combat. Entangled by Sima Disao, Wu Hao's had no choice but to first deal with this persistent nuisance. Otherwise, with no advantage in speed, simply fleeing would only prolong the inevitable. Conversely, seizing the opportunity of apparent internal discord among the enemies, if he could first sink one Fire Seed warship, there might still be hope of escape. At the very least, the patrol fleet from the mining area Starfield was en route for reinforcements. Holding out until then would provide a turning point. With his plan decided, Wu Hao's turned to engage Sima Disao in fierce combat. Sima Disao likewise dared not delay. This kind of ambush battle emphasized speed and efficiency. The longer it dragged on, the more likely other factors would be drawn in. He was now at the end of his rope, and Sima Dalang was completely unreliable, so he could only muster his remaining courage for another fight. More than 20 minutes later, with the desperate assistance of Sima Zongda's assault ship, Sima Disao, despite suffering grievous damage, broke through Wu Hao's flagship's resistance and sank it. The cost was that Sima Zongda's assault ship was heavily damaged, almost losing its combat capability. Sima Disao's flagship was heavily damaged, with armor destruction exceeding 86%, and its engine damaged, losing 60% of its thrust. On the flagship, the crew, who had fought a bloody battle, let out cheers that were now weak and breathless after confirming their final victory. The prolonged, high-intensity combat had drained everyone's physical and mental energy. As soon as they relaxed, many felt their vision darken, experiencing shortness of breath and chest tightness. Sima Disao also let out a long sigh. Although the cost was heavy, he ultimately survived this ordeal. Moreover, this battle, in which he almost single-handedly took charge, repeatedly fought against superior numbers, and carved out a path to victory from near impossibility, not only tempered the entire warship and the combat will and skills of all crew members. It also made Sima Disao feel his own spirit and well-being refined. His forging technique cultivation, which had been stuck at a bottleneck for a long time, also seemed to show signs of a breakthrough. If he could break through from the perfect beginner stage of forging technique to the intermediate stage, it would mean embarking on the path of transcending mortals. At that time, Sima Disao's status within the family would significantly improve. Sima Dalang, bah, just you wait. Narrowing his eyes slightly, Sima Disao fiercely vowed in his heart that what he suffered today would surely be returned twofold in the future. Whether it was Sima Dalang or that person in the family. 13th brother is mighty and majestic, your younger brother is truly impressed. Please, 13th brother, quickly go to the side and rest for a moment. I, your younger brother, will handle all the miscellaneous tasks myself. A sarcastic voice came through the communication channel, making Sima Disao, who was immersed in his own world, jolt. Beg. Sima Dalang, what do you want to do? A premonition of ill omen rose in Sima Disao's heart as he glared at Sima Dalang's flagship, which had approached unnoticed. He shouted in anger. Naturally, I'm clearing the battlefield and doing some odd jobs. 13th brother, don't worry, your share of the spoils will definitely be presented to you with both hands. Sima Dalang said with a triumphant smile. Commander. They are boarding the wreckage of the merchant fleet's Fire Seed warship. They're trying to steal our spoils of war. The adjutant cried out in disbelief. The warship sunk by an individual naturally becomes their spoils of war. This is the rule of the battlefield. Sima Dalang had been completely useless in the battle just now, yet now he shamelessly tried to snatch the most valuable spoils from the battlefield. This kind of character, this kind of behavior, simply redefined everyone's bottom line. Sima Disao was so enraged he almost vomited blood on the spot. Only a fool would believe in presenting the spoils with both hands. Did he really think he could get back something that Sima Dalang had already swallowed? Furthermore, if Sima Dalang gave him a pile of junk afterward and told him it was all the spoils, would he believe it? Even if he didn't, what could he do? Most importantly, all of Sima Disao's hopes rested on that high-quality ship-mounted module. Sima Dalang's actions were truly murderous, a complete and utter annihilation. Sima Dalang, you son of a fool. Watching Sima Dalang's flagship, with its almost perfectly intact energy shield, swaggeringly docked next to Wu Hao's flagship wreckage, its tractor beams and automated robots continuously collecting various spoils of war. Both Sima Disao and everyone else were momentarily speechless. It was simply too shameless, too unrestrained. Wang Dong clutched his chest, feeling sorry for Sima Disao. Sima Dalang was just such a despicable person, completely without a bottom line. Before his rebirth, Wang Dong had suffered many losses because of him. Watching him ruthlessly scheme against the pitiable Sima Disao, Wang Dong felt a pang of empathy. Although Sima Disao's flagship had been heavily damaged, Wang Dong still had no intention of launching a sneak attack. Sima Delang's condition was almost perfect. And if Wang Dong's pawn showed itself, it would be suicide. However, Wang Dong was not in a hurry. His plan was already considered a success. After completely losing track of Yuan Shu and the battle axe, the Jin family members were in a dilemma. At this time, Wang Dong released the news that Wu Haozi's merchant fleet had a high-quality ship-mounted module acquired at a high price. This undoubtedly succeeded in focusing the Jin family members' attention on the merchant fleet. Since Yuan Shu and the battle axe were nowhere to be found, Wu Haozi's merchant fleet, which had some suspicion, became the primary target. It didn't really matter whether the high-quality ship-mounted module in the merchant fleet was truly acquired at a high price or obtained from the wreckage of the battle axe. Being able to obtain a high-quality ship-mounted module indirectly achieved their goal. For both Sima Disao and Sima Delang, this was an acceptable outcome. The conflict between the Jin family fleet and Wu Haozi's merchant fleet, as Wang Dong had predicted, indeed occurred. Although the result was somewhat unexpected for Wang Dong. Wu Haozi's merchant fleet was almost completely wiped out. Moreover, between the two Jin family brothers, Sima Delang clearly had the upper hand, forming an overwhelming advantage. But Sima Disao was indeed weakened to his lowest point. This was already enough. Wang Dong didn't hope for something like catching them all in one go, that was a low-probability event. What he feared most was that after the Jin family fleet and Wu Haozi's merchant fleet engaged in battle, they would be evenly matched, and after realizing neither could gain an advantage, they would disengage. Although, given the Jin family's consistent ruthless style, this was also a low-probability event. After the battlefield was cleared, Wang Dong didn't believe that Sima Delang, who was about to seize the largest share of the profit, would be kind enough to continue waiting for Sima Disao to return to the Goldfinch Federation together. By then, the abandoned Sima Disao would be like a piece of fat meat, laid out before Wang Dong. What he needed to do was to remain dormant with the pond, quietly following behind Sima Disao, waiting for the opportune moment to deliver a fatal blow in some deserted corner. Wang Dong's calculations were clear and precise, he just wanted Sima Delang to act quickly, finish collecting the spoils, and get lost. Although he was very interested in the ship-mounted module being transported by Wu Haozi's merchant fleet, stable development clearly outweighed everything else, and Wang Dong would not take any additional risks. Anyway, he would have to confront the Jin family sooner or later, so he would just consider it temporarily stored in Sima Delang's hands. Sima Delang thought the same. While quickly and skillfully scavenging the spoils, he also, for once, bid farewell to Sima Disao in a cheerful tone. 13th brother, I'll go ahead and clear the way. Please be sure to follow. See you at our family. Sima Disao was provoked into a furious rage. Yet, he dared not confront Sima Delang's perfectly intact flagship with his own damaged vessel. Just as Sima Delang was about to succeed, the situation took a sharp turn. All efforts are in vain, what can be done? Sima Zongda sighed deeply. The adjutant standing beside him clenched his fists, his face contorted in a grimace. Commander, can it be that even with your wisdom, you see no hope for a breakthrough? Sima Zongda shook his head slightly and sighed. Sima Delang's bottom line is beyond everyone's imagination. Unless his combat power is dismantled, don't even think about getting back our rightful spoils. But the crucial point is, even if we violate the Jin family's first family precept, brothers fighting each other, our two warships combined are no match for Sima Delang's flagship. Even with our Sima Disao's bravery, in a head-on battle, he cannot defeat Sima Delang. The adjutant's words showed a complete lack of respect for Sima Delang. Sima Zongda could understand the resentment in the adjutant's heart. Not to mention the adjutant, who was Sima Disao's confidant, even Sima Zongda himself found it truly disgusting. The Jin family's style was ruthless and cold-blooded, but not to the extent of Sima Delang's despicable behavior. Yet, due to his birth, Sima Delang's status in the family was still considerably higher than Sima Disao's. You are also a veteran soldier, well-versed in battle, and should know that having or not having an energy shield makes a world of difference for a fire seed warship. No matter how courageous Sima Disao is, even if he fully utilizes the explosive power of his flagship and launches a charge, he will be powerless against Sima Dalang, whose shield is intact. As for skirmishing, with a damaged engine and reduced thrust, it would be no different from seeking death. Unless we can launch a successful surprise attack, swiftly dismantle his energy shield, and inflict sufficient damage to his engine, similarly reducing its thrust to a certain extent, otherwise, we have no chance of victory. Sima Zongda said regretfully. Perhaps, we are not entirely without a chance. The adjutant's eyes flickered, and he murmured softly. What? Sima Zongda didn't hear clearly and casually asked again. Nothing. The adjutant looked up and smiled brightly. Sima Zongda instinctively felt something was wrong, and then, thinking of something, his expression suddenly changed drastically. The Jin family's first family rule is strict enforcement. Don't be impulsive. Sima Disao cannot bear this responsibility. Sima Disao certainly doesn't need to bear this responsibility. The one who acted was Commander Yu. The adjutant sneered, waving his hand, and two armed robots behind him stepped forward, immediately restraining Sima Zongda. You are seeking your own death. Even if you push me out, you cannot bear this responsibility. Sima Zongda did not struggle pointlessly, but still tried to awaken the other party's reason with words. Sima Disao has shown kindness to us many times. Now is the time to repay him. The adjutant's face was twisted and deformed by his overly excited expression. The next moment, a series of commands were issued, and immediately more than a dozen armed robots, originally used for boarding combat, arrived in the command cabin. Under the deterrence of force, the adjutant's will was carried out. Just as Sima Disao was feeling smug. The assault ship Sima Zongda was on, which had been ignored by everyone and was on its last breath, suddenly fired a missile at Sima Dalang's flagship, which was close at hand. It was the Sidewinder energy field neutralization missile that had achieved great success in the first wave of surprise attacks. Warning! Warning! Close-range missile attack. Evade! Quickly evade. Not fast enough, cannot evade. Secondary cannons, quickly form an interception net. No. It's too late, the distance is too close. After a few seconds of panic, the high-speed Sidewinder energy field neutralization missile had already crashed into Sima Dalang's energy shield. Light spots flashed. The almost perfectly intact energy shield vibrated violently under the impact of the Sidewinder energy field neutralization missile. It seemed as if a pair of invisible hands were forcefully tearing and deforming it. A few moments later, the energy shield around Sima Dalang's flagship, after flashing its last light, suddenly dimmed. Warning. Shield overloaded. Buffer countdown 11 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. The ship's AI's warning tone was cruelly unacceptable. How dare they? Sima Dalang's eyes widened in astonishment, and he was speechless for a while. The first rule in the Jin family's family precepts was not to fight among themselves. This was why he had been on the sidelines until he had gained an absolute advantage, yet still hadn't moved against Sima Disao. Once exposed, he would inevitably suffer severe punishment from the family. Even direct descendants could have their status revoked, let alone a mere collateral branch's illegitimate son. Sima Dalang had never expected that Sima Zongda, who in his impression merely obeyed Sima Disao, would pay such a heavy price for Sima Disao. Did I misjudge him? Is Sima Zongda actually one in a million loyalists? Or does Sima Disao really have some secret technique for winning over subordinates? For a moment, Sima Dalang's astonishment even overshadowed the panic of being suddenly attacked. Compared to the Fire Seed warship of the merchant fleet, which emphasized anti-strike capability, Sima Dalang's flagship was not as durable. A direct hit from a Sidewinder energy field neutralization missile immediately overloaded its shield. The sudden attack was far from over. While firing the missile, the assault ship Sima Zongda was on, like crazy, using engine over frequency, accelerated to a certain degree in a very short time, and slammed viciously into Sima Dalang's flagship. Before the two ships collided, all the firepower on the assault ship aimed at the stern of Sima Dalang's flagship and fired at full speed. Counterattack, sink them. The vibration from the ship's hull being attacked woke Sima Dalang from his astonishment. Infuriated, he immediately issued a counterattack order. To board the wreckage of Wuhaozi's flagship and search for spoils, Sima Delang's flagship was in a relatively static, low-speed state. In a short time, it could not accelerate enough for evasive maneuvers. At the same time, the direction chosen by the assault ship was the stern of Sima Delang's flagship, far from the firing range of its standard main cannon. For a while, Sima Delang's flagship could only rely on its 4 secondary cannons to barrage the incoming assault ship, trying to stop it. Even with just 4 secondary cannons, although the front of the assault ship was riddled like a honeycomb, it could not stop the assault ship, carrying immense kinetic energy, from slamming viciously into the stern of Sima Delang's flagship. It was only thanks to the helmsman, at the last moment, who activated 4 auxiliary directional adjustment engines at all costs, that the warship barely shifted. This caused the point of impact to change from directly facing the engine exhaust port at the stern to facing the side of the exhaust port. A tremendous shock. Visibly, at the collision point of the two ships, the hull began to twist and deform under the force, and a large number of small hull fragments and parts scattered and shot out. The entire stern of Sima Delang's flagship was severely damaged. More crucially, the engine exhaust port underwent significant deformation. This would severely affect the engine's thrust output. Meanwhile, the assault ship, much smaller than a fire-seed warship, suffered even more severe damage in the collision. Its hull, already badly damaged in previous battles, simply broke apart completely upon impact. A self-sacrificing strike, so cruel. Wang Dong, watching from afar, was completely stunned. Sima Zongda's behavior was completely different from his previous impression. Careful thought and calm restraint were his hallmarks. Not the passionate hero he was now, grand and tragic. Is the butterfly effect this obvious? Does that mean the information in my mind is completely unusable from now on? This contrast even made him start to doubt himself. Even Sima Disao, the biggest beneficiary, took a long time to react. Zongda, I have wronged you. Rest in peace, I will take good care of your sister. As long as I live, I will never let her suffer any grievance. The tragic scene before him made Sima Disao feel an uncontrollable urge to shed tears. Move to the enemy ship's stern area, maintain follow-up maneuvers. Connect me to that little brat Sima Delang's communication, I want to have a good talk with him. After 3 seconds of silent mourning, the light of hope reignited fiercely in Sima Disao's eyes. The damage to Sima Delang's flagship's engine thrust was even more severe than his own flagship's. Moreover, the recent emergency evasion caused Sima Delang's flagship's 4 directional adjustment engines to overload and directly suffer damage, reducing their performance. In terms of maneuverability, Sima Disao now held the advantage. Coupled with the fact that the opponent's energy shield had already been overloaded, Sima Disao was virtually invincible. Just like the overwhelming advantage Sima Delang had just held. The speed at which fortunes turned was truly touching. Little 16, the situation is decided. If you're smart, hand over my spoils of war obediently, and Brother 13 promises not to beat you to death. Facing the smug Sima Disao, Sima Delang's expression changed rapidly. The expression, which had always been a half smile, half sneer, and subtly sarcastic, transformed into a serene smile in an instant. Coupled with that fair face, he actually looked quite handsome. 13th brother, look at what you're saying. I'm just a handyman, waving flags and cheering behind 13th brother, and doing some small tasks. These spoils of war, little 16th, I originally gathered them specifically to save 13th brother some effort. I'll hand them over to you right away. Please keep them safe. Sima Delang's bowing his head in submission greatly relieved the frustration in Sima Disao's heart. Although Sima Zongda sacrificed himself, severely damaging Sima Delang's flagship and returning control of the situation to himself, Sima Disao knew very well in his heart that he could not be as decisive as Sima Zongda and directly attack Sima Delang. Not all the crew members on the ship were his confidants, and even if they were, it would be impossible to keep the secret forever. If he were to personally sink Sima Delang's flagship, he would definitely face severe consequences upon returning to the Jin family. His previous actions could be attributed to Sima Zongda's own initiative, unrelated to Sima Disao. Sima Disao dared not go a step further. Of course, this did not mean that if Sima Delang stubbornly resisted to the end, then a desperate Sima Disao would not choose to risk everything. Sima Delang also understood this point, so he simply conceded. The two reached a consensus. Subsequently, a lifeboat, carrying the spoils of war Sima Delang had searched for, slowly drifted out. Sima Disao maintained vigilance while sending people to board and meticulously search it before using a magnetic traction beam to bring it into the ship. When he found a purple quality sky patrol radar among the items, Sima Disao's heart finally settled. At that moment, the two brothers, estranged and disloyal, no longer exchanged unnecessary greetings and did not bother to clear the battlefield. Instead, they each chose a direction and quickly departed. Engine thrust damage was no small problem. Especially since they were about to face being wanted and pursued by local forces. They needed to find a relatively hidden location for emergency repairs and then leave the Zijing kingdom as quickly as possible. The battlefield returned to silence. After a while, a small lifeboat flew out from a piece of wreckage, avoiding the direction the two Jin family warships had departed, and disappeared into the vast expanse of space. Under the cover of the lingering Mi particles, it moved silently, seemingly without alarming anyone. Except for Wang Dong. It must be Sima Zongda, right? The pond, in stealth mode, was quietly parked nearby, clearly observing this scene. The small lifeboat had flown out from the wreckage of Sima Zongda's assault ship. After spotting the small lifeboat, a small detector ejected from the stealthy pond, lightly approaching the stern of the small lifeboat and firmly attaching itself. Subsequently, this small detector quickly changed its appearance, becoming almost identical to the hull of the small lifeboat, making it nearly impossible to distinguish with the naked eye. Wang Dong felt that, given Sima Zongda's habits, it was perfectly normal for him to leave himself a way out. It would be strange if he didn't. So, he also left a little something on this lifeboat. Looking thoughtfully in the direction the lifeboat disappeared, Wang Dong smiled slightly. Immediately, he changed direction, following the path Sima Disao had taken, accelerating at full throttle in pursuit. He hoped this detector wouldn't be wasted, he was looking forward to some surprises. At 9:23, this battle, involving the Jin family fleet, the Tianfang Earl Territory Merchant Fleet, and 3 local forces from the mining area Starfield, officially concluded. Wang Dong and the pond observed for half the battle, completely unharmed. Among them, the Tianfang Earl Territory Merchant Fleet suffered the heaviest losses, except for 3 scout ships, none survived. Even the 8 transport ships were caught by Sima Delang and sunk one by one. The 3 local forces in the mining area Starfield lost more than half their strength, but the Quinao Guildhall preserved its strength intact. In the coming period, the distribution of power within the mining area Starfield was bound to undergo a round of upheaval. The Jin family fleet only lost 1 assault ship during their internal conflict. Although the 2 Fire Seed warships were heavily damaged, they still survived. Clearly, in terms of the actual combat power of the Fire Seed warships, the Jin family fleet held an absolute advantage. Wang Dong was even more grateful that he had not chosen to engage the Jin family's warships in a direct confrontation. Subsequently, the pond remained in stealth mode, closely trailing Sima Disao's flagship. It followed all the way, allowing Sima Disao's flagship to change its course multiple times, until it finally stopped in a desolate, uninhabited star system. Watching Sima Disao's flagship dock on a moon of an outer planet in the uninhabited star system, disguised, and beginning emergency repairs, clearly indicating it wouldn't leave anytime soon, Wang Dong directed the pond to set up several detectors from afar, then left until it was beyond the maximum detection range of the Sky Patrol radar. Adhering to the principle of caution, Wang Dong once again pulled back a considerable distance, then, inside a gas giant, had the battle axe exit stealth mode. Then, it swaggered out of the gas giant and into space. Wang Dong had no intention of approaching Sima Disao's flagship in stealth mode and then launching a sneak attack. Doing so would undoubtedly expose the existence of the Mirage system. It might even easily be linked to the missing battle axe. Even if Wang Dong never intended to leave any survivors, who could say for sure about such things? If the extermination wasn't thorough, or if someone managed to leave behind some clues, that would be even more troublesome. Rather than that, it was better to continue to keep the pond and the battle axe separate. Let the pond be a simple fisherman. In the idiom, the snipe and the clam grapple, the fisherman profits. As for how the pond tracked Sima Disao's flagship, it was simple. Perhaps the Sky Patrol radar on the pond was of higher quality and gangway level than the one on Sima Disau's ship, allowing it to track from outside the opponent's detection range. It was also possible that the pond used some kind of shipborne module with tracking capabilities, enabling it to ascertain Sima Disau's movements. In any case, it had nothing to do with the Mirage system's stealth effect. A few hours later, the pond approached the moon where Sima Disau's flagship was located. Captain, anomaly detected. The radar operator's warning was timely. But Sima Disau's mouth was full of bitterness. At this time, Sima Disau's flagship was in a state of emergency repair. The engine compartment at the stern and the thrusters behind it were critical areas prioritized for repair. Even the armor modules on the outside of the hull, with over 90% damage, had to be put aside for later. This was because with damaged engine thrust, not only could the warship's speed and maneuverability not be guaranteed, but it also couldn't enter deep space jump travel mode. This rendered a supplementary jump device, which Sima Disau had specifically applied for and temporarily obtained from his clan before departure, useless. Although Fire Seed human civilization possesses deep space jump technology, due to the unique nature of Fire Seed warships, the deep space jump devices manufactured by Fire Seed human civilization are not necessarily successfully integrated and recognized as shipboard modules by the shipboard Fire Seed. Every deep space jump device that can become a shipboard module for a Fire Seed warship is extremely valuable. Not all Fire Seed warships are equipped with deep space jump devices. When these Fire Seed warships undertake long voyages, they can only rely on third-party channels such as stargates and wormholes. Currently, the most important thing for Sima Disau is naturally to leave the Zijing Kingdom and return to the Goldfinch Federation. Therefore, the superluminal travel of deep space jump is an irreplaceable mode. Emergency repairs involving the engine naturally require a shutdown. Although the backup energy system can still ensure the normal operation of a few devices like the Sky Patrol radar, to immediately enter combat status, the opened engine bay and the disassembled nozzle components must first be reinstalled. This is not a task that can be completed in a short time. Sima Disau could only first order a full ship alert and for maintenance personnel to accelerate their work. At the same time, he maintained a silent state, hoping that the camouflage net he set up was sufficiently concealed and that the other party was just passing by. Wang Dong was aware of Sima Disau's current situation. The detector left in advance further confirmed Sima Disau's movements after the pond entered communication range. He didn't deliberately play games like feigning retreat to capture, as villains always die from talking too much. From afar, MI particles were dispersed to cut off Sima Disau's external communications. Although for Sima Disau, there were no reliable reinforcements nearby, Wang Dong chose to be cautious and did not hesitate to waste some MI particles. As an essential item for killing at home, MI particles are not cheap, and purchasing channels are scarce. Fortunately, the former captain, Yuan Shu, was quite resourceful, and the pond's inventory of MI particles was sufficient for some time. After cutting off Sima Disau's last glimmer of hope, the pond, like a hawk, plunged directly towards the bottom of a crater where Sima Disau's flagship was located. The standard main cannon fired, accurately hitting the stern of Sima Disau's flagship amidst the desperate gazes of everyone. The already severely damaged armor could not stop the high-speed impact of the kinetic projectile. The warship, lying quietly in the crater like a dead fish undergoing repairs, could not perform any evasive maneuvers. In a violent explosion, the engine bay of Sima Disau's flagship was directly penetrated, and the engine was completely destroyed. With critical damage, and a series of subsequent secondary explosions, Sima Disau's flagship sustained damage exceeding the threshold, and its shipboard Fire Seed extinguished. Sima Disau's flagship sank. Subsequently, Wang Dong hovered the pond above the wreckage of the warship and used 4 secondary cannons to patiently destroy all escape pods, killing all survivors. Finally, he even dispatched armed robots from the ship to search the wreckage inch by inch, ensuring nothing was overlooked. He smiled faintly. Lord Sima Disau, you lived a few extra days this life, and got to display your bravery. Be content. Also, rest in peace. After plundering the spoils and retrieving them into the cabin with a magnetic traction beam, the pond opened fire again, with both the standard main cannon and secondary cannons, completely destroying the wreckage of Sima Disau's flagship. The intense bombardment triggered the collapse of the crater, completely burying the wreckage of Sima Disau's flagship. Wang Dong did not believe anyone could find even a trace of it in a short time. The pond quickly left this uninhabited star system, avoiding the main navigation route, and headed into the void. After the Mirage system's cooldown period ended, Wang Dong repeated his trick, found a gas giant planet, activated the Mirage system, and put the warship into stealth mode. He then changed course and returned to the mining area starfield. Wang Dong chose Sima Disau as his target for pursuit, rather than the more detestable Sima Dalang, after careful consideration. Firstly, the high-quality shipboard module escorted by Wu Haozi's caravan ultimately fell into Sima Disau's hands. This was a significant bonus. Secondly, if both Sima Disau and Sima Dalang disappeared simultaneously in this starfield, it would undoubtedly draw the Jin family's attention here later. No matter how secretly Wang Dong acted, trouble is still trouble. Conversely, Wang Dong eliminated Sima Disau and let Sima Dalang go. Then Sima Disau's disappearance could have multiple explanations in the eyes of Sima Dalang and even the Jin family. For example, Sima Disau, who instigated Sima Zongda to violate the Jin family's first family precept of internal strife, feared posthumous punishment and chose to defect. Wouldn't this explanation be more consistent with Sima Dalang's perception of reality? At the same time, it would also be more in line with his interests. After Sima Disau's disappearance, Sima Dalang, as the victim, would naturally hold the moral high ground when dividing Sima Disau's remaining interests. Undoubtedly, choosing to pursue Sima Dalang was the choice that maximized Wang Dong's interests. Finally, Wang Dong contentedly took out his small notebook and crossed out Wu Haozi's name. Sima Disau's name was not in the small notebook. He didn't survive past 3 chapters in Wang Dong's previous life and was insignificant in Wang Dong's mind. On the other hand, Wu Haozi, before Wang Dong's rebirth, was commended after successfully returning to the Tianfang Earl territory with the high-quality shipboard module he escorted this time and Wang Dong's information. He also took this opportunity to enter the ranks of the Earl territory's middle-level cadres, and his life took off from there. Unfortunately, this time, Wang Dong's strategy of driving away wolves to devour taigas and fishing in troubled waters directly nipped his rise in the bud. Along the way, Wang Dong maintained a stealthy state while traveling. When the duration was about to end, he would find a celestial body nearby and use it to conceal the warship. As long as it remained in a silent state and the engine operated at low power, it was not easy to find the whereabouts of a small warship in the vast universe. After several days of such careful travel, Wang Dong finally returned to the mining area planet. On Sima Disau's flagship, Wang Dong had a considerable harvest. After a fire seed warship is sunk, its shipboard fire seed extinguishes, and the shipboard modules originally carried on board are likely to be destroyed along with it. Sima Disau's flagship was no exception. The standard main cannon and other standard modules originally carried on board, as well as additional modules including the blue-quality thunder pressure device, were all destroyed with the sinking of the warship. Wang Dong hadn't expected any gains in that regard anyway. However, the purple-quality shipboard module seized from Wu Haozi's caravan ultimately fell into Wang Dong's hands. Explorer Sky Radar, LV0, Detection Range, 20, Accuracy, 20. Additional attributes. Spiritual detection. Can detect all shipboard fire seeds not previously mounted on a fire seed warship within a 1 light-minute range, and display their location. Energy consumption. 50 units, use, cooldown, 12 hours. Upgrade requirements. 1. Source points 400. 2. Titanium crystal 1 unit. This is a purple quality sky patrol radar. Compared to the unranked one currently used on the pond, the basic values of detection range and accuracy alone are almost doubled. The increase in detection range and accuracy, for a warship, has an obvious effect. This allows Wang Dong to have a greater warning range and accuracy. This is especially important for the pond at its current stage. Not to mention, there's also the additional attribute of spiritual detection. This is also what Wang Dong is most satisfied with regarding this purple quality sky patrol radar. Spiritual detection targets shipboard fire seeds that have not been mounted on a fire seed warship. It can be said that it is specifically used to unearth undiscovered shipboard fire seeds. Its best use is within alien space. The sources of a fire seed warship's shipboard fire seeds are diverse, and alien space is one of the channels with a higher proportion. Every interstellar civilization in the universe has its own characteristics, otherwise it would not be able to leave its home planet. Each alien space battlefield for a fire seed warship is a process of colliding with other interstellar civilizations. This collision between different civilizations seems to subtly conform to certain rules, making it easier to produce quality modules recognized by the shipboard fire seed. There are often rumors of fire seed warships acquiring shipboard fire seeds in alien space. These shipboard fire seeds might be the standard main cannon or other components from an alien space civilization's warship. It could also be a creation of their civilization, such as a mining device. Or it could be a symbol of their civilization, such as a historical statue. And so on, there are many possibilities. They are diverse and very difficult to find, like looking for a needle in a haystack. For a destroyer-class fire seed warship, the shipboard fire seed's sensing range for shipboard fire seeds does not exceed 1 kilometer. That is to say, a warship needs to be within 1,000 meters of a certain civilized creation to determine if it is a shipboard fire seed that can be recognized by the shipboard fire seed. At first glance, it seems like a lot. But in the cosmic starry sky, what is a mere 1,000 meters? It's not even dust. Furthermore, in alien space, a fire seed warship often has to engage in fierce battles with alien space civilizations as soon as it appears, leaving no time or opportunity to search slowly. No matter how high the probability of a shipboard fire seed appearing, it might not be discovered. Spiritual detection can detect all shipboard fire seeds not mounted on a fire seed warship within a 1 light-minute range and display their location. Although it's only a one-time effect, and the cooldown is as long as 12 hours. But compared to the shipboard fire seed's own detection range, how much difference is there? 1 light minute. What kind of gap is that compared to 1 kilometer? Those who know, it's certainly not 100 times. In addition, for Wang Dong, he has another advantage. Mirage system. The pond, equipped with the Mirage system, can remain in a cloaked state when entering alien space. It doesn't need to engage in fierce battles with the opposing civilization as soon as it enters alien space, unlike other fire seed warships. After entering, Wang Dong can first use the Explorer Sky Radar's spiritual detection function, choose a suitable location, activate spiritual detection once, and look for the existence of shipboard fire seeds. Then mark them specifically. Suitable ones, such as those in fixed positions, can be collected first by relying on the cloaked state. Unsuitable ones, such as those on a certain warship, can be specially marked by the shipboard optical computer and dealt with carefully during battle. This way, he won't miss out on acquiring shipboard fire seeds and can also avoid damaging them during battle. When the nest is overturned, no egg remains intact. Shipboard fire seeds are not indestructible. This series of operations is exponentially better than the predicament of general fire seed warships, which basically can only rely on luck to slowly search the battlefield after the battle. The Explorer Sky Radar is the biggest gain. Of course, it's not without its drawbacks. Purple quality shipboard fire seeds are already considered high quality, and their enhancement requirements have changed from common minerals to precious minerals like titanium crystal. Although the required amount is not high, only 1 unit. The unit of measurement for titanium crystal is not mass or volume. It is a prismatic golden crystal, and its volume and mass are already fixed when it naturally forms. Each prismatic crystal is 1 unit. However, titanium crystal is a rare mineral on the market, and even if some occasionally appear through special channels, the price is not only high, but the quantity is also very scarce. 1 unit is the difference between having and not having. But it doesn't matter, even an unupgraded Explorer Sky Radar is far superior to the plain version on the pond. After returning to the mining area Starfield, Wang Dong, with a smile, installed it on the pond. After a shipboard fire seed is installed, it requires 24 hours to complete the link with the shipboard fire seed. It's not plug and play. At the same time, a certain amount of source points must be consumed. Wang Dong first unlinked and removed the unranked Sky Patrol radar previously installed on the pond. Then he replaced it with the purple quality Explorer Sky radar, consuming 40 source points, to begin the process of linking the shipboard fire seed. 0. Remaining source points, 77. The higher the quality of the shipboard fire seed, the more source points are required for installation. In addition to the Explorer Sky radar, Wang Dong also obtained a lot of supplies from Sima Disau's warship. These included a large amount of ammunition, standard energy blocks, and daily necessities, as well as a small amount of Mi particles and other miscellaneous items. Among these, some were originally from Sima Disau's flagship, and more were obtained from Wuhaozi's merchant fleet's warships. The standard main cannon and secondary cannons on the pond all use corresponding standard kinetic ammunition, consistent with Sima Disau's flagship and the escort fleet in the merchant convoy. These supplies greatly alleviated the pond's supply needs. After the last alien space battlefield, Wang Dong had almost depleted the ammunition on his warship, and energy reserves relied solely on energy crystals. This was not a long-term solution after all. Wang Dong had originally planned to find an opportunity to resupply in the public starfield soon. As a result, the good person Sima Disau saved him worry and effort. Standard main cannon ammunition remaining, 1253 rounds, secondary cannon ammunition remaining, 9025. Energy remaining, 3368, daily necessities remaining, 986 units. In addition, all the ore previously stored on the pond were broken down by Wang Dong, yielding 5 units of low-level energy crystal. This increased Wang Dong's low-level energy crystal to 56 units. The auxiliary system's short-term operation is completely unrestricted. With food in hand, one's heart is at ease. Wang Dong felt quite fulfilled. 8. July 21, 4 a.m. The pond, in stealth mode, quietly returned Wang Dong to the mining area planet. He exchanged places with the armed robot that had been dutifully driving him around various outdoor scenic spots for the past few days. Wang Dong first painstakingly used the pond's onboard optical computer to quickly analyze the audio and video data recorded by the armed robot over the past few days. No anomalies were found. He then checked his personal smart terminal. There were no urgent messages requiring a reply. Furthermore, in the wilderness, the signal reception of a personal smart terminal wasn't very good, so not replying for a short period was normal. In contrast, the RV was equipped with high-power communication devices for the rental company's positioning and emergency calls. Then, once the pond had successfully found a hidden location, Wang Dong finally completely relaxed. He didn't choose to rest for a night in the rented RV. Wang Dong drove back to the city overnight and slept soundly in his own home. The next day, he returned the RV and settled the bill. Wang Dong hailed a taxi and arrived at a secluded street in the outer perimeter of the urban area. Not long ago, in the battle between the Jin family fleet and Wuhaozi's merchant fleet outside the mining area Starfield, Sima Zongda's assault ship had played a role in turning the tide of the battle, but the ship was subsequently sunk. Hidden within the wreckage of this assault ship was a lifeboat, which quietly departed after the battle ended. However, it was discovered by the pond, which had remained in stealth mode the entire time. Wang Dong placed a small detector on this lifeboat, and according to the signals received, this small lifeboat eventually returned to the mining star not long ago, landing in a certain residence in this street. The mining star has a small population, so the per capita land area is a meaningless number. In this street on the edge of the city, every house is a courtyard-style residence, occupying at least 1,000 square meters, and they are not close to each other. A mere lifeboat could easily be parked there. According to the information transmitted by the detector, Wang Dong saw the sole survivor disembark from the lifeboat. Indeed, it was Sima Zongda. It was clear that the lifeboat was Sima Zongda's contingency plan for himself. And this residence in the secluded street was also Sima Zongda's contingency plan for himself. Just to make a temporary stop on the mining star and execute a mission, Sima Zongda could leave behind a fallback option, which shows his caution and meticulousness. Sima Zongda was a collateral branch descendant of the Jin family. Relying on his intelligence and step-by-step efforts, he restored his declining family business and further elevated his status, becoming a model for the rise of collateral branch descendants. However, the Jin family's system meant that Sima Zongda, with his inherent disadvantage in birth, had to join Sima Disao's faction to seek protection. Before his rebirth, Wang Dong had suffered considerable losses at his hands. However, Sima Zongda later severely offended a certain direct descendant because of his younger sister, leading to continuous suppression. Ultimately, Sima Zongda defected from the Jin family and had several brief collaborations with Wang Dong, who was also being hunted by the Jin family. Undoubtedly, Sima Zongda was a talented individual. This had been verified by numerous facts before Wang Dong's rebirth. Unfortunately, Sima Zongda's previous status prevented Wang Dong from considering recruiting him. But that was in the past. Wang Dong, who had observed the entire battle between the Jin family's factions and Wu Haozi's merchant fleet, could clearly see the counterattack launched by the assault ship commanded by Sima Zongda against Sima Dalang's flagship. Although it momentarily turned the tide of the battle, giving Sima Disao the upper hand, it was a heroic act. At the same time, it undoubtedly cut him off from the Jin family. Regardless of whether the order to fire on the Jin family warship was given by Sima Zongda himself, Sima Zongda, as the commander, had to bear the greatest responsibility. From that moment on, Sima Zongda's previous Jin family background no longer existed. Now, even if Sima Zongda miraculously survived, his future was bleak. It was precisely because of this that he could be recruited by Wang Dong. Of course, not in Wang Dong's current civilian identity, but after Wang Dong returns to the Blackstone barony soon. The reason Wang Dong came here was to see if there was a possibility of connecting with Sima Zongda in advance. The detector had not been discovered and was still continuously transmitting information. Sima Zongda's condition was not good. He seemed to have been injured during the process of boarding the lifeboat, as there were many bloodstains on his body. He staggered off the ship, followed by a small intelligent medical robot. This silver-white, wheeled intelligent medical robot was also damaged, with its emergency indicator lights constantly flashing. Yesterday, Sima Zongda had made an appearance, but today he had not shown up at all. As Wang Dong approached Sima Zongda's hidden residence, he could hear faint alarm sounds coming from inside. This was the automatic alarm function of the intelligent medical robot. When it cannot provide effective medical services to a patient and the patient is in a critical condition, it will automatically sound an alarm. Wang Dong didn't hesitate. Looking at the not-so-sturdy door, he resolutely raised his hand, and then, activated his personal smart terminal. Hello, I am a concerned citizen. I heard an intelligent medical robot's alarm coming from a residence in this street and suspect there is a seriously ill patient inside. Please send someone immediately. The exact location can be seen in the positioning I sent. When there's a problem, you should, of course, contact the relevant authorities. Wang Dong was a law-abiding citizen with no power to resist. How could he dare to physically storm a private residence with automatic security systems? Once Wang Dong illegally entered Sima Zongda's residence, the activated automatic security system would not only trigger an alarm but also carry out a certain degree of self-defense. Wang Dong didn't want to suffer. Soon, an ambulance from a medical institution and security personnel from that area arrived. The alarm sound of the intelligent medical robot was quite sensitive to these professionals. Therefore, under the authorization of the security officer, the residence's automatic security system was unlocked. Medical personnel entered and, after providing initial care to Sima Zongda, who had already fainted inside, they transported him to the ambulance. As a concerned citizen, Wang Dong, after registering his identity and verifying the situation, could leave on his own. However, he boarded the ambulance with them, under the guise of helping all the way. Sima Zongda's injuries were serious, with multiple hemorrhages and a concussion. Fortunately, after professional medical care, he quickly got out of danger and regained consciousness. Looking at the pristine white surroundings and feeling the pain from his wounds, Sima Zongda could only offer a bitter smile. In this conflict between Sima Disao and Sima Dalang, Sima Zongda's assault ship brazenly violated the Jin family's first family precept by attacking Sima Dalang's warship. For Sima Zongda, the consequences were extremely severe. On that assault ship, most of the crew were Sima Disao's subordinates. Sima Zongda only possessed the authority to command. Although Sima Zongda, coerced by his adjutant, managed to board a life raft at the last moment thanks to a contingency plan he had left in place, he still sustained serious injuries during his escape. But the incident had already occurred. Even if the order was not given by Sima Zongda himself, but by the adjutant Sima Disao had assigned to his ship. Sima Zongda was still inevitably saddled with the blame. He had neither human witnesses nor material evidence. What's more, with his status, he had no say within the Jin family. If Sima Zongda had died, that would have been the end of it. But since Sima Zongda was not dead, he would inevitably face relentless pursuit from the Jin family. Therefore, after escaping with his life, Sima Zongda's first priority was to hide himself and not expose himself to the Jin family's sight. In Mining Star, the closest planet to the incident site, was a very risky place for Sima Zongda to stay. The problem was that this was the only refuge Sima Zongda could reach in a short time. He had originally intended to stay here for a few days, treat his injuries, and then move on. Unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. Not only was he injured, but the intelligent medical machinery was also damaged during the sinking of the assault ship. As a result, his injuries did not improve, but worsened. If he hadn't been lucky enough to meet a good citizen, Sima Zongda wouldn't have even kept his life. It would be too dark humor to not die gloriously in a ship battle, but instead on a bed in a safe house. However, being sent to a public place like a medical institution was also not what Sima Zongda wanted. In such a place, records would definitely be left, and afterwards, anyone with malicious intent could easily trace his whereabouts. Although it would take some time for both Sima Disao and Sima Delang to return to the Jin family's star domain located in the Goldfinch Federation. The transmission of information would only take a few days. Once Sima Delang and Sima Disao's flagships withdrew to a safe area, contacting the Jin family would not be difficult. The consequences would be severe once the news of Sima Zongda violating the Jin family's rules spread back. Sima Zongda was not alone, he had a sister and a family business. If something happened to him, he would definitely need to send the news back in time to give his family time to react and respond. Otherwise, Sima Delang would surely retaliate against his family. Furthermore, without Sima Zongda's protection, his sister would also be powerless to resist the covetousness of certain individuals within the clan. For civilian methods like the Star Domain Network, the two countries had not enabled interconnection, making direct cross-communication impossible. Moreover, the Jin family's control over its territory had always been severe. The civilian network had long been completely monitored. If Sima Zongda used this channel, there would be a great risk of exposing his identity and whereabouts. The fact that Sima Zongda, a dead man, had come back to life, would inevitably trigger a subsequent reaction from the Jin family. Given Sima Zongda's cautious nature, he would not act this way unless absolutely necessary. Long-distance communication across star domains, especially secret communication, was not only expensive but also required certain channels. As for channels, Sima Zongda's abilities meant he didn't have to worry. Money was the big problem. In a remote, foreign place like Mining Star, many of Sima Zongda's resources could not be mobilized without revealing that he was still alive. He could only rely on himself to earn money while concealing his identity. Sima Zongda had originally intended that, upon returning to Mining Star, he would immediately find a way to hide his identity and make a quick buck, then use some underground channels to send emergency news back home. However, his severe injuries and the unexpected damage to the intelligent medical machinery completely ruined his plan. Time was running out for Sima Zongda and his family. "You seem very troubled." A clear voice sounded in his ear, and then a piece of fruit was offered to him. Sima Zongda knew this was Wang Dong, the enthusiastic citizen, who had discovered the intelligent medical machinery's alarm and notified the medical institution, saving his life. Earlier, after Sima Zongda woke up, the two had a brief introduction and conversation. Their chat was apparently quite pleasant. Especially regarding caution, the two had a lot in common. At the same time, some of Wang Dong's views on values also greatly appealed to Sima Zongda. During their conversation, after learning that Sima Zongda was alone on Mining Star, Wang Dong unhesitatingly decided to stay and accompany him through the critical period. He was a strange fellow who claimed, "The fact that we could meet like this means we are fated. But he should be a good person." Taking the fruit, Sima Zongda stared at the pure white flesh, pondered for a moment, and then decided to speak directly. Time was pressing, he had to seize every glimmer of hope. "I need some money." Wang Dong smiled knowingly. Medical expenses on Mining Star are indeed not cheap, but for a qualified interstellar miner, it's acceptable. "Don't worry, I'll cover the medical expenses first, and you can pay me back whenever it's convenient." He really was a good person. Sima Zongda confirmed again. "Besides that, I also need a considerable sum of money, at least 300,000. His strong inner composure allowed Sima Zongda to speak words that most people would find hard to accept, in a steady tone. He looked up at Wang Dong's gentle eyes. Hearing Sima Zongda's words, Wang Dong raised an eyebrow in surprise. But he did not show any negative emotions towards Sima Zongda. Instead, after a moment of thought, he smiled and spoke. "Although we just met, I can tell that Mata is no ordinary person. Normally, 300,000 should only be a small sum to Mata. I don't know what happened to Mata to cause his current predicament. But I believe Mata will definitely overcome this difficulty. For Mata to be willing to ask me, a stranger he just met, there must be a very important reason. No more idle talk, 300,000 is not a problem. Please give me your account number, Mata, and I will transfer the money immediately." Sima Zongda was somewhat surprised, but also had a strange feeling. Mata was naturally his alias, reporting his real name would be courting death. Wang Dong's initial impression of him was clear. He was a good person among the common people, with decent abilities and qualities. He was willing to spend time and effort for a stranger, and even proactively agreed to cover medical expenses. He was kind-hearted and financially well off. Sima Zongda had not actually expected Wang Dong to agree to the subsequent request for 300,000. His original intention was that even if he couldn't borrow 300,000, he would borrow as much as he could. The more starting capital he had, the more money he could earn with his abilities, and the shorter the time needed to earn enough money. 300,000 was definitely not a small sum for a commoner. On Mining Star, a residence with an area of over 100 square meters only cost less than 100,000. Although the interstellar miner profession had an income level above the middle class among commoners, 300,000 was not something that could be easily produced. Yet Wang Dong agreed to it just like that. This made Sima Zongda momentarily a little disbelieving. It completely exceeded his expectations of Wang Dong. From Wang Dong's perspective, this choice was very simple. Firstly, he knew Sima Zongda's true identity and talent, and was aware of his current predicament. Secondly, Wang Dong coveted Sima Zongda's body. No, he coveted his talent. Given the opportunity to bestow a favor, he naturally wouldn't miss it. Sima Zongda would likely not stay long on Mining Star. If he missed this opportunity, who knew when he would next be able to contact the incognito Sima Zongda. Although with Wang Dong's current status, he couldn't yet recruit Sima Zongda to work for him, as long as they had this memorable interaction, there would naturally be infinite possibilities in the future. Finally, 300,000 Zijing Kingdom currency was really nothing to Wang Dong, who already owned a fire seed warship. As for whether he would appear too kind, and thus arouse Sima Zongda's suspicion, Wang Dong didn't care. Sima Zongda urgently needed this money, so much so that he directly asked a stranger like him. In this situation, even asking him to sell himself might have been a possibility, so what was a little suspicion? Wang Dong was clearly bestowing a favor, and Sima Zongda had to accept it. Moreover, it was goodwill from a savior. From a human nature perspective, Sima Zongda would be more likely to accept it. Sima Zongda subconsciously said, "I don't have a suitable account to use right now. It would be best if you could give me cash directly or equivalent precious metals." Wang Dong showed a big smile. "No problem." That afternoon, Sima Zongda completed the emergency discharge procedures and left with the 300,000 in cash Wang Dong gave him. All that was left for Wang Dong was a small note. After carefully noting down the contents of the note, Wang Dong destroyed it. It was a secret contact method. Wang Dong had a premonition that Sima Zongda would soon leave the mining star. Especially after he received the news of Sima Disao's disappearance. That would mean Sima Delang would have complete control over the discourse regarding this mission, and Sima Zongda would have no hope of a comeback within the Jin family. Moreover, with Sima Disao's disappearance, the Jin family would inevitably send people to investigate. At that time, the risks Sima Zongda would face by remaining on the mining star would be 100 times greater than now. After achieving his goal, Wang Dong was in a good mood. He returned home and took out a sky blue injection. This was the antidote Yuan Shu had stored in the captain's cabin. The antidote to the Yuan family's secret medicine. After sinking Sima Disao's flagship and confirming Sima Disao's death, the onboard optical computer on the pond unlocked the authorization for this antidote to Wang Dong. It should be said that Wang Dong was not using this antidote for the first time. He had already used it once before his rebirth. So Wang Dong was very clear about the upcoming process. No special preparations were needed, he could inject it directly. However, after injecting this antidote, there would be a period of drowsiness. Therefore, Wang Dong did not inject it on the pond, but waited until he returned to the mining area planet to inject it. As the antidote was injected into his body, the Yuan family's secret medicine on Wang Dong dissolved. Wang Dong successfully broke free from the shackles left by Yuan Shu and began to truly control his own destiny. Have you heard? Wu Haozi's merchant fleet was attacked in the nearby starfield and completely wiped out. In the evening, Wang Dong received communications from Zheng Yan and others. Without exception, they all spoke of the attack on the Tianfang Earl territory's 4th merchant fleet. There was a certain delay in the transmission of news, and news of this level was manipulable for some upper-class individuals. Therefore, being able to get the news within a few days of the incident was actually quite good. If it were ordinary civilians, it might take half a month or even a month before they saw related reports in the mainstream news. This shows that after their ambition for social climbing was ignited, the members of this small group had, through their own efforts, achieved some results. Another gathering was therefore natural. The location for this gathering was proposed by Wang Dong, a private room at Maizu Internet Cafe. These relatively high-end private rooms had 2 to 8-star domain network access devices, in addition to small bar counters and other entertainment facilities, suitable for a small gathering of friends or couples. According to the information we've gathered from several different channels, it can basically be confirmed. Wu Haozi's merchant fleet was almost completely annihilated. Apart from a few scout ships, all escort fleets and transport convoys, including Wu Haozi's flagship, were sunk. Even Wu Haozi himself couldn't escape. Zheng Yan's expression was serious. Even when speaking of Wu Haozi's death, there was not much joy on her face. Chen Linfeng asked with some confusion, Wu Haozi, that guy, got his just desserts. This is good news, class monitor, why are you still so serious? Before Zheng Yan could answer, Li Ziqing already gave him an exasperated glare. Idiot, Wu Haozi died, he died. But don't forget his identity. The Tianfang Earl territory's 4th merchant fleet was completely wiped out near the mining area starfield. When this news gets back, what kind of reaction do you think the Tianfang Earl territory will have? Of course, they'll send people to handle the aftermath, and also investigate the specific circumstances of the attack. Chen Linfeng said, as a matter of course. Then you tell me, will we, who just caused Wu Haozi a little trouble a while ago, also be within the scope of the Tianfang Earl territory's investigation when they arrive? Li Ziqing sneered coldly. What does this have to do with us? We just caused Wu Haozi a little bit of trouble. Chen Linfeng's eyes widened, saying inexplicably. From the Tianfang Earl territory's perspective, what you think doesn't matter, what matters is what he thinks. Ding Ling, sitting next to Wang Dong, said quietly. Chen Linfeng's face darkened, speechless for a long time. The few of them all fell silent. It was Zheng Yan who broke the silence. We shouldn't worry too much yet. Didn't Wang Dong say that the current Earl of Tianfang is in poor health, and various forces within the territory are intertwined, not keen on external matters? Perhaps the subsequent investigation won't reach us. Even if it does, it's a small problem. The mining area starfield after all belongs to the Blackstone Barony, so the Tianfang Earl territory can't just do whatever he wants. We'll pay more attention to news in this regard when we go back. When soldiers come, we'll block them. When water comes, we'll cover it with earth. There's nothing to worry about. Li Ziqing nodded. I'll try to inquire about the Blackstone Baron's view on this matter. We're not deeply involved, so there might still be a turn for the better. Ding Ling clenched her small fist, cheering everyone on. The atmosphere on the mining area planet seems a bit restless recently. Major forces like the Kongsha Merchant Guild seem to be making big moves. If it's all because of the merchant fleet attack, there might be some hidden mysteries we don't know about. Those small things we did before might not have even been noticed by them. Chen Linfang, after a moment of contemplation, due to the specificity of his own channels, Wang Nuohao proposed another possibility. Wang Dong observed the entire time. Although facing difficulties, none of them made excuses or complained. They worried about the impending storm, but showed no signs of shrinking back or giving up. They were all actively trying to plan. This was the essential atmosphere for a qualified small team. After Wu Hao's and his merchant fleet were completely wiped out, the subsequent development of events differed from Wang Dong's previous life. The complete destruction of the Tianfang Earl territory's 4th merchant fleet near the mining area Starfield within the Blackstone Barony. Wang Dong had no clear answer in his mind about the subsequent developments this incident would bring. But he wasn't flustered. Within the Tianfang Earl territory, Wu Hao's didn't have a clear faction he sided with. But judging from his conscious invitation to Zheng Yan to participate in the reserve talent selection, he should have been relatively inclined towards the Earl's third son. Wang Dong crossed his hands, resting his elbows on the small bar counter, and said softly. The others nodded understandingly. The reserve talent pool is currently managed by the Earl's third son. Since Wu Hao's intended to introduce Zheng Yan, who possesses outstanding looks and figure, into the Earl territory's reserve talent pool, he was essentially delivering her into the hands of the Earl's third son, a known lecher. His bias was self-evident. Regarding this bias, those within the Earl territory see it more clearly than outsiders like us. Therefore, the one who would care most about the demise of Wu Hao's and his caravan would undoubtedly be the Earl's third son, Wang Dong continued. In recent years, with the intensification of internal struggles within the Earl territory, the entire Earl territory's development strategy has long shifted from strategic balance to strategic conservatism. Seeing that several people looked puzzled by Wang Dong's use of the term, strategy, Wang Dong explained at the opportune moment, as the most powerful and highest-ranking territory in the nearby star domain, the Tianfang Earl territory, since the current Earl inherited the title, has always adopted a dynamic strategic balance policy. Dynamic strategic balance refers to actively taking various measures to maintain the relative balance of various forces within the sphere of its influence. To put it simply, it means supporting the weak and suppressing the strong, preventing the emergence of new powerful forces nearby that could shake the influence of the Tianfang Earl territory. The others nodded in understanding, except for Chen Linfang. Wang Dong ignored Chen Linfang's head scratching. He didn't need him to understand that clearly. As for strategic conservatism, it's not actually a true strategy. Rather, it's a passive effective governance by inaction, caused by the internal struggles within the Tianfang Earl territory being too intense to allow for consistent external decision-making. In other words, the Tianfang Earl territory has let go of the reins on the various forces around it, allowing them to run wild. This has also led to increasingly fierce conflicts between various forces in the nearby star domain in recent years, and the presence of star pirates has become more rampant. Li Ziqing suddenly realized, no wonder interstellar trade has been significantly affected in overall scale these past few years. My father said business has become much harder. Ding Ling also said, so that's it. No wonder the patrol fleet in the mining area Starfield has been expanded repeatedly in recent years, and the Duke's Manor even specially deployed a small space fortress. Zheng Yan gently tapped the armrest of her chair and said, as a direct noble under His Majesty the King, the Blackstone Barony should have been fully suppressed by the local noble faction led by the Earl of Tianfang. However, in reality, the Blackstone Barony has developed rapidly in recent years. Although the surrounding local noble forces have maintained a cold and unfriendly attitude, they haven't taken large-scale actions like encirclement to curb it. It seems the main reason is that the Tianfang Earl territory is unable to attend to other matters. Chen Linfang continued to scratch his head and asked, does this have anything to do with the trouble we're about to face? He wasn't stupid or foolish. He just had a natural blind spot in certain areas. Wang Dong smiled without answering. Li Ziqing, however, interjected, idiot. Wang Dong explained it very clearly. The Tianfang Earl territory is currently a bunch of people locked in internal duels. If no bandits kick down their door and disturb them, the Tianfang Earl territory will wait until a final victor is decided internally before opening the door and looking for trouble with others. Chen Linfang finally understood and rejoiced, so, even if Wu Haozi's caravan is attacked, the Tianfang Earl territory won't care. And no one will care about the obstacles we put in Wu Haozi's way earlier. Of course they will care, otherwise, where would the Earl territory's prestige be? And how would their caravans do business in the future? Zheng Yan shook her head. But the Tianfang Earl territory won't make a big fuss over it. They will only identify the culprit and take targeted action. As for insignificant small fry like us, they won't have the time to pay attention to each of us individually. Isn't that the same? Anyway, it means we won't have any trouble. Chen Linfang laughed heartily. Li Ziqing gave him another helpless glare. Although it sounded a bit strange, what Chen Linfang said seemed to be the final conclusion. There will still be a little trouble, Wang Dong smiled. The Earl's third son, as a directly involved party, will inevitably be part of the investigation into this incident. Therefore, the probability of our charming class monitor coming into his sight is almost 100%. For this lecherous individual, this is undoubtedly a delicious feast. The likelihood of him taking liberties can also be anticipated. Although the pressure the current Tianfang Earl territory can exert on the Blackstone barony is not significant, and the Earl's third son's attitude does not represent the entire Earl territory. We don't need to worry too much about official pressure. But the class monitor's personal trouble, is probably unavoidable. Everyone blinked, and Chen Linfang was the first to let out a knowing laugh. Then Ding Ling and Li Ziqing also couldn't help but laugh. Being too good-looking is also a burden. Zheng Yan lightly spat, you're the delicious feast. As long as it wasn't an official appearance from within the Blackstone barony, as local powerhouses, they weren't really afraid of people from the Earl territory who had traveled a long way. As for the harassment from admirers, Zheng Yan had seen plenty of it. She couldn't help it, she was good-looking. Zheng Yan even turned around and mocked Li Ziqing and Ding Ling, you still have the nerve to laugh at me. One is a delicate young lady, and the other is a legal lowly. Be careful not to be treated as appetizers. Then it was Li Ziqing and Ding Ling's turn to counterattack. You're the appetizer. What do you mean, legal lowly? Explain yourself. Don't think I won't bite you just because you're the class monitor. Wang Dong and Chen Linfang watched the three girls playfully bicker and also burst into laughter. The atmosphere in the private room became joyful for a while. Afterward, Wang Dong and Chen Linfang stayed online, while the three girls went home. Good girls generally don't stay overnight at internet cafes. 222 was online, so Wang Dong happily chatted with the little girl for a long time. Then Wang Dong heard a piece of gossip. Within the Goldfinch Federation, the largest opposition party had changed from the former Ducal Party to the recently established Civilization Party. Its leader was none other than Zhang Shensho, the president of the Golden Finch Federation Academy of Sciences. Wang Dong remembered that name. Before his rebirth, the Jin family, Wang Dong's biggest nemesis, was a top power within the Goldfinch Federation. And Zhang Shensho and the Civilization Party he founded would become one of the main protagonists stirring up the political winds within the Goldfinch Federation in the coming years. So, Wang Dong and 222 delved a little deeper into the topic of the Civilization Party. Incidentally, he searched for Zhang Shensho's personal information on the Star Domain Network. The Star Domain networks between the two countries were not interconnected, but that didn't mean some public data information was completely isolated. Enthusiastic netizens were never in short supply, no matter the era. Moreover, the profession of journalist still shone brightly in the interstellar age. All sorts of shocking and astonishing headlines were still ubiquitous. With a quick search, Wang Dong gathered a pile of evaluations. What a handsome uncle. Such perfect looks, I've screenshotted it for my collection. Follow. Does anyone know which self-media platform Minister Zhang usually uses? After blocking out all that dross, the real information emerged. Zhang Shensho, male, 136 years old, Forging Technique Intermediate LV5, graduated from the Federation Central University of Science and Technology, and has served as the Dean of the Golden Finch Federation Academy of Sciences since January of star calendar 10055. In the interstellar era, human lifespan has further increased. Even among commoners, it is not uncommon for people to live healthily to 150 years old. Moreover, after reaching the intermediate level, practicing forging technique can effectively extend one's lifespan, so 136 years old is just entering middle age for Zhang Shensho. The Golden Finch Federation Academy of Sciences is an independent administrative unit, and the dean's administrative rank is close to that of top officials in its national administrative system. His status is equivalent to a marquis in the Zijing Kingdom, according to Wang Dong's understanding. If Wang Dong remembered correctly, this seemingly promising dean would participate in the current Federation presidential election and led in votes during the initial stages. However, due to his overly open policy proposals, which infringed upon the interests of major powers like the Jin family, or rather, the privileged class, Zhang Shensho was suddenly declared a traitor overnight, and the Civilization Party was defined as an illegal political party. Zhang Shensho was forced into exile abroad, and the Civilization Party scattered. This was something that would happen in the next 2 months. Of course, if that were all, Zhang Shensho would not be considered a protagonist who stirred up the winds and clouds. Just 2 short years later, Zhang Shensho made a comeback. After gaining support from other countries, Zhang Shensho meticulously planned and successfully carried out uprisings in as many as 18 administrative regions within the Goldfinch Federation, establishing the Revolutionary Army, and appointing himself as its Grand Commander. He became the initiator of the Goldfinch Federation split and the biggest beneficiary after the split. He truly stirred up the winds and clouds. In his previous life, Wang Dong had no dealings with him, but the Revolutionary Army's territory was an excellent refuge for him. The Revolutionary Army's agenda was inherently hostile to forces like the Jin family. This was because Zhang Shensho advocated for the limited opening of first-generation fire seed warships and forging techniques to the common populace. Both of these were important resources monopolized by the privileged class and used to maintain their status. For Zhang Shensho to succeed, the waters here were truly deep. Wang Dong didn't necessarily want to join the Revolutionary Army. But since Zhang Shensho was mentioned, he still needed to pay attention. He heard that this person was exceptionally talented and had astonishing charisma. If there was a chance, Wang Dong truly wanted to meet him. Before Wang Dong's rebirth, a saying circulated in this starfield, which included the Goldfinch Federation, the Zijing Kingdom, and a dozen other large and small nations. A man who doesn't know Zhang Shensho, even if called a hero, is still lost. Perhaps there was an element of propaganda, but such a figure, in Wang Dong's view, was indeed worth meeting. Living another life, on the premise of being cautious, living more freely was the true meaning of enjoying life. After chatting for a while, 222, who was still a student, went offline to rest. Wang Dong didn't stay long either, and a few hours later, he also ended his internet surfing session. August 1st, clear. The orange-yellow light shone on his body, warm and extremely comfortable. Due to its orbital path, the mining area planet didn't get to enjoy such warm sunlight for long periods. The shipboard fire seed on the pond had already finished its month-long buffering period on the afternoon of July 23. This also meant that by consuming just 1 unit of low-level energy crystal, Wang Dong could use the auxiliary system's miraculous function to directly capture alien space signals. Then, he could open a new alien space battlefield. But Wang Dong was not in a hurry to board the pond. Instead, he waited until August 1st, a normal mining day, and still chose to board the pond under the guise of mining. Wang Dong, who had just disappeared from public view for several days under the pretext of an outdoor spring outing, couldn't find a suitable reason to disappear again for at least 24 hours. Arranging an urgent mining trip against the usual schedule would be even more inappropriate. Even though the Jin family's threat had temporarily vanished, Wang Dong remained cautious. However, it was only a delay of a few days, which was not a big deal. He could also use this opportunity to make a small adjustment to the buffering completion time of the shipboard fire seat on the pond, which would be more convenient for future alien space battlefield expeditions. At the mining company's helipad, Wang Dong looked around, intending to use the auxiliary system's scanning vision to select a mining spaceship in good condition. However, the scruffy administrator, Zhou Lao San, called out to him. Brother Wang Dong, wait a moment. What? Is something wrong? Wang Dong raised an eyebrow and asked. Zhou Lao San glanced left and right, and seeing a few interstellar miners selecting spaceships, he gently pulled Wang Dong aside. Old Qin's mine might not last, it's going to be transferred to the Tianyu Merchant Group soon. In the future, the mining company's profit-sharing standards might change. Those guys from the Tianyu Merchant Group, who squeeze oil from stones, won't be as easy to talk to as Old Qin. Brother Wang Dong, I suggest you work a few more shifts while Old Qin is still here and get the money into your own pocket, that's the real benefit. Going forward, any rare ores you mine, just come to me, Zhou Lao San, and I guarantee I'll get you the most favorable purchase price. Oh, and this news hasn't been announced yet. On the surface, Old Qin is still holding on, so don't let it slip easily. Zhou Lao San's mumbled tone forced Wang Dong to concentrate to understand him. Old Qin was originally the largest contractor in the mining district, and he had made a fortune over a long period. But from Zhou Lao San's words, it seemed he was under pressure from the Tianyu Merchant Group and had no choice but to give up this lucrative business. As for Zhou Lao San's suggestion, Wang Dong just listened. If the Tianyu Merchant Group really took over the mining company and the mining district's contracting rights, it would indeed not be good for interstellar miners like Wang Dong. Compared to the penny-pinching Tianyu Merchant Group, the qualified scoundrel Old Qin could even be called benevolent. The Kongsha Merchant Guild, the Tianyu Merchant Group, and the Quinao Guild Hall were the three major local powers on the mining area planet, with the Tianyu Merchant Group having the worst reputation. But Zhou Lao San's words contained too much self-interest. It was nothing more than that he was about to change bosses, and he didn't know if he could keep his own job. It would be better to make a quick buck while he still had some power. The reason he approached Wang Dong was because Wang Dong's mining skills were well known. Such a thing, of course, couldn't be widely publicized. Zhou Lao San could only choose a few people to operate within a small circle. The so-called favorable purchase price was more likely Zhou Lao San buying it himself and then finding channels to sell it outside. Could the market price be the same as the mining company's purchase price? By purchasing the rare ores mined by Wang Dong and others at a price slightly higher than the mining company's acquisition price, and then selling them at market price. This back and forth would result in a large profit that originally belonged to the mining company. Wang Dong saw this very clearly. Of course, the fact that Zhou Lao San dared to act so unscrupulously also indirectly confirmed that the news of Old Qin being kicked out was basically certain. Why did this change happen? 6. Thanks for watching.